Welcome to the Tiverton Town Council, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Hilton.
Present.
Councilor DiMederos.
Present.
Councilor Katz.
Present.
Councilor Coulter.
Present.
Councilor Cook. Councilor Driggs. All present. Councilor Perry, will you move your nameplate down, please? Thank you.
Again, good evening and welcome. By my count, this is the 10th meeting of this session of the Tiverton Town Council in just 2 months. We do have consent agenda items. We'll start with that. The first consent agenda item is approval of a variety of minutes from December 10th, January 5th, January 7th. That would be the joint workshop with the school committee and the budget committee, as well as a special executive session that we held also on January 7th. Continuing on January 14th, both regular and executive. Our second consent agenda item is receipt of minutes from various boards and commissions, 3 from the Budget Committee, the Personnel Board, Historical Cemeteries, Open Space, and Land Preservation. We also have correspondence from Mr. Roger Bennis and Mr. Peter Moniz. And we have the December monthly budget and revenue report from our treasurer. And finally, I think we previewed this last week, was the approval of the Project Purple Proclamation. That is this week, starting this week of January 28th through February 1st. I see we're wearing, all of us are wearing purple. Very, very well done. So, and we also, did you want to speak to this at all, or no? Okay. We also have some T-shirts as well. So, those are the 5 items. Would anybody like anything removed?
The executive, the January 14 meetings under C1F.
The executive only. Okay, very well. Any other removals?
CA4.
CA4, December report.
And CA5.
And CA5, okay. I had a feeling we'd be talking about that. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, with the exceptions of 1F, number 4, and number 5?
So moved.
Second.
I've heard a motion from Denise, seconded by Joe. All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Driggs.
So this is the English major in me would actually like this word to stay, but the lawyer in me feels the word passion in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down on the 2nd page should read possession.
Say that again, Nance.
So it's just a...
Yeah, I don't have it. It's fine.
It's just a typo on the executive.
Instead of adverse passion, adverse possession.
Okay.
I actually sort of like the word.
All right. It sounds like a motion from Councilor Driggs. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All right. All those in favor with that typo correction? Thank you very much. Councilor DiMederos.
Just briefly, the treasurer's report. I'm looking at the capital expenses, the non-reoccurring. It always worries me midway through the budget when we still have a 0% expended in some of these items, because these were asked by the council to the budget committee, and we got approval, and it looks like we haven't spent any of it yet. And I just want to make sure that the plan is to spend it, because we did tax the people for capital expenses, and I don't want this to go into the general fund, and next year we ask for the same thing. The DPW director's here, and I know there's been progress, but I was just curious. The 10-wheel dump body, there's still 0 expended.
Mr. President,
Unless you want to answer me.
This is the page you're talking about. There's a lot of yellow on it, which are the items that I think you're talking about that.
Well, it's just what we received. It's
Right.
only yellow because I yellowed it on mine.
No, but I have yellow.
Okay.
Because I did the same thing that you did. So my plan is to sit down with DPW in particular, but also the fire department, maybe one or two. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do want to say something about the fire department. We were told the dire need of air packs and air bottles, and actually said it was a safety issue during the budget time. And we did look at how we were ordering air bottles. We did look at expiration date, and we did make a plan. And it was like a dire emergency at the time, and we still have the full balance in there. So I'm kind of concerned on whether or not we do have bottles that have expired. I realize we have a different acting chief now, and I'm not putting him responsible for this, but the chief who was present at the time was with us for a couple of months, and it doesn't look like these were replaced. And I don't know if you remember that, but it was quite the crisis that was said to us, and it appears that we have not even bought a bottle. And I just want to make sure we do, because we did have a plan.
Okay, if it's all right with you, I was going to sit down with the
Sure.
relevant department heads, make sure we have an idea as to what the story is with these items. I think the plan is still to go ahead and do this, but if anything has changed, I would want to come back in, or probably put it in the packet in terms of, whether anything is changing or when we expect to make these expenditures.
This is definitely not a criticism. I just want us to be aware of this so that we don't end up not buying this and asking
That's
for
why
it
we have
later.
this. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I make a motion to approve item CA4.
All those in favor? Thank you. Back to Denise.
I don't know if you want to read the proclamation, Rob, or do you want me to? But I thought that we should read, I don't remember if we read it we didn't read it at the last meeting, so I thought that maybe we should read it so everybody knows why we're wearing purple.
Be happy to. Town of Tiverton Town Council proclamation. Whereas Project Purple, an initiative of the Heron Project, a nonprofit foundation established by former National Basketball Association basketball player Chris Heron, assists individuals and families struggling with addiction. Project Purple was launched to break the stigma of addiction, bring awareness to the dangers of substance abuse, and shed light on effective practices. And whereas the Project Purple concept developed when Chris spoke at a local high school in 2011 in front of students wearing purple shirts. After sharing his story, a young woman raised her hand and stood up to speak. As snickering and laughter was heard, the student said, "Thank you, Mr. Heron, for validating what we do. We are the sober students of this high school, and each year we take a pledge to not use drugs or alcohol." Mr. Heron was surprised by the courage it took to not only stand up and share the symbolism of the purple shirts, but he was inspired to make a difference among adolescents across the United States. Now, therefore, we, the Tiverton Town Council, do hereby proclaim the week of January 28 through February 1, 2019, as Project Purple Week in the town of Tiverton, and urge all citizens to celebrate and support the efforts of the Tiverton Prevention Coalition by wearing the color purple and displaying the color purple outside of one's home. Be it adopted by the Tiverton Town Council, January 28, 2019. We just need a motion to do that.
I move, so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the open forum. We have two items. The first is Ms. Carol Herman on the topic of library board appointments. Ms. Herman?
Carol Herman, Vice Chair, Library Board of Trustees. I know this item appears on your agenda, so I just want to ask you whether you'd like me to make my comments now, or if you'd prefer that I wait until you take up the item.
If it has to do with the process, I think now would be a good time. If it has to do with a particular qualification on a particular candidate, I would ask we reserve that until next week when we actually take the vote, but I'm not sure what you wish to speak to.
I wish to speak on the Library Board's recommendation.
Okay.
which was included as part of this week's packet.
If possible, I would prefer that we hear from the candidates, and then next week, we actually would do the deliberation. But it is an open forum, so I won't stop you if you prefer.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
a question. It seems under the charter that, just asking, that it's the town council's, no candidate can be appointed until the town council does the interview. So I would request that we wait until we do the interview, which I think is our purview.
I'm happy to wait until after you interview them, but I would like to speak this evening. So if you're not willing to let me speak after the interviews this evening, I will take advantage of my opportunity to speak now.
Okay, go ahead and proceed.
Okay. I'd like to read into the record the letter from our Library Board of Trustees Chair, Kathy Cleese Clarendon. Memo to Tiverton
Excuse me.
Town Councilors.
I'm against that. I did read it. I think it's very prejudicial to the people that are applying. It's not required by the town council, and I have some issues as to why and how this was done. Because some of the people that were at this interview were actually was an applicant who took part in the interview. She actually even voted to send this letter.
Mr. President,
I think what we have here is really a point of order objection, so
So if I just-
I think instead of this debate, what I think I'm hearing is a question to overrule the chair to allow the speaker to speak on this topic.
but doesn't that have to be done by a vote?
That's right, but I want to make sure we agree on the procedure on this, because I don't want to put the open forum speaker in an uncomfortable spot.
Well, it's
Can you give me some-
it's an uncomfortable spot for the individuals that were
Right.
interviewed to all of a sudden have someone come up and it's not required.
Mr. President,
It
may I
also prejudices the opinion of the town council to not come with a clear slate on anyone and to have something being said.
Mr. President, may I speak regarding this matter? I understand that the library board interviewed these candidates. I understand that was with full approval of the town administrator, is that correct? The interview process, did you know about it?
No,
You did not know that they were going to interview?
no. I
Oh, I thought
basically
that's not what
defer
you
to the
took.
Board of Trustees quite a bit, so.
Okay, so did they talk, okay. But you are in charge of the Board of Trustees, is that correct? It is not the town council. And it's a board and commission. I thought I had a conversation with you where you said that you knew that they did this.
No, I had made a suggestion when I heard that there were multiple applicants, that I thought it would be helpful to the council to have recommendations from the Board of Trustees. That's just based on my understanding of how we either work together or perhaps should be working together. That's all I did.
So you made a suggestion, so you weren't against them doing it?
No, I wasn't, but I didn't have direct communication with the board
Okay.
on it.
The town administrator is in charge of board and commissions. If he made a suggestion and the board went about and did the interviews, I don't see how that hurts anything. They work with these people, they know what the board is responsible for, and I don't think that it hurts that they give us their opinion on why they think that these candidates would suit this board. And that's...
I firmly disagree with you, and I'm not I'm just going to say I'm not very happy with the town administrator doing that. It does not say that in the boards and town council boards, commissions and committees. It does not say anything about the town administrator having an extra interview by any boards or commissions. It just says they're supposed to apply and come before the town council for an interview. They cannot be voted in on that night, but not, unless there's something very special about the whole thing. Maybe there's not another applicant and they're very qualified and you can do it right then. It can be waived. This is not the process that is in the town council boards and I'll say BCC. And I'm just going to, I looked over very carefully, and this is how I felt about it, that instead of being only interviewed by the town council, it added another interview, which lends itself by the process of allowing appointments to become a process that's hasn't been voted in by the town council for this particular policy.
I just want to...
One of the other things is that it never was properly advertised either.
I can address that accusation that was
I'm sorry,
made.
Carol, it wasn't advertised
I can address
properly.
that if you'd like to hear the
Okay,
facts.
everybody,
no.
everybody, hold on a second here.
I
We
still
have
want-
to understand the context.
I'm
This isn't-
talking.
This is an open forum, and the concern I have is we are far afield from an agenda item, and this is an open forum, that we're really only supposed to be taking one-way information. I actually agree with what Councilor Cook is saying, but I don't want to change the practice of the open forum without a vote of the council. And so I need some kind of a consensus on what the right way to proceed is.
I just want to say
I
that
don't want to
this...
debate the subject.
No, I'm not going to debate
The
it.
question is whether you want to overrule the chair to allow the speaker to speak, and I don't know what that takes.
No, I think it should be under
I think this-
the appointments and resignations. That
think-
it should be under that.
But this is open forum where a speaker is allowed to speak to the council.
This
And
is
we are
out
not
of
supposed to
order.
speak back.
We're
or
not
ask any
supposed to speak
questions.
back.
Correct.
It's out
3
of
minutes
order.
enough time?
Mr. President?
I have not timed myself. I did ask around to see if I was going to be timed, and I would have practiced my remarks. I have
certain
not
fact
practiced them or timed them, so I
out
can't
of
tell you
order.
whether it's 3 minutes or it's 4 minutes.
Mr.
I'm
President?
going to make a motion that,
May I?
if I can.
Well,
First of
I asked for
all,
the-
I'm sorry, Trish, it's out of order.
I tried to ask, no, I
That's
actually
on
said
me.
Mr. President 3 times, and
Let's
I
let-
haven't been
Let's let Trish
recognized.
give me some feedback, then we'll hear a motion, and I think this is a good procedural exercise here, and we can figure out what to do when I make a mistake. So, Councilor Hilton.
So I would suggest that you allow Ms. Herman to speak when we get to the appointment thing. However, if what she'd like to do is read the letter into the record, that's a public document. It's already in the backup. So, I mean, she'd like to say it publicly, and if the library board feels that way, I think that is perfectly fine. And we can have a bigger discussion about the process here, but I'll say 2 things. One, every single action and every single thing that every single board and commission does not have a written rule about it. There are certain things that are specifically allowed, and there are certain other things that are specifically not allowed, and other than that, the boards and commissions are, allowed to, operate in their own way. As far as the interview process goes, I know that this has been done historically in the past. As a matter of fact, the prior council asked the library board for a recommendation at one point because we had 2 really good candidates with different skill sets, but both great candidates, so we went back and...
We didn't ask.
The council asked the library board, would you like to make a recommendation? Because, and that was a request, this happened in the past, the council asked for it. And finally, there have been any number of times where informally, an applicant who is applying for a board or commission has come here in front of us, and informally, the board chair has stepped up and, not necessarily with written documentation, said, listen, this person's come to our meetings, they really seem interested, we think they'd be a great addition. So there is certainly a long historical precedent for, some level of participation amongst the boards and commissions. But if you, I do think because this is public record, that Ms. Herman should be allowed to speak, whether it's now or more appropriately when we get to the appointments thing, that's fine.
Mr. President, I have a brief comment I'd like to make to what
Since everybody else has spoken.
Councilwoman Hilton just said. So I went back over the minutes of 2017 that I think Counselor Hilton is referring to. And in the July 24, 17 meeting, at least in the minutes, the quote was, Counselor Ryan agreed with Counselor Hilton should hear from the library board director before appointing. Both are excellent candidates. So the word recommendation was not there. And then on August 15th, a month later, Counselor Hilton believed while both great applicants would defer to the recommendation of the Library Board of Trustees. So that was what I found in the minutes.
I think when I said I'd like to hear, maybe I didn't use the word, I would like a recommendation. I said I would like to hear from, I was speaking a little colloquially, but that was the intent.
Sure.
I agree that this is not part of the purview of the Library Board of Trustees, but I think legally, there's no way to stop them from interviewing people and meeting with people. Similarly here, there's no way to stop somebody from speaking during the open session. I think it would be inappropriate to bring up audience members during the interview process. As you referenced, next week during our deliberations would be a better time for feedback from the public. Today would be, I think that would be inappropriate. So if we cannot stop, I don't think we should stop people from availing themselves of the open forum at this time.
What's the procedural posture here?
So,
what's it take to overrule the chair? 4-3 majority or 2/3 or?
It would be a majority vote, but this is not a, there is no rule in place here. So this is simply the chair's discretion to allow or just put limits on public comment in this circumstance. There's no motion. This is not a procedural step within a motion or a debate. This is simply the chair's discretion to allow the public to speak at an open forum. If you had adopted rules this session as to how many minutes or what have you, then there might be a more typical vote. But obviously, you can't do that tonight, not having noticed any rules. So you can't adopt rules tonight. So it is the chair's discretion, which of course can, on a point of order, be overturned by a majority.
The discretion can be overturned in a point of order.
You can
Majority or majority vote?
I believe it's majority vote.
Okay. So we have a request that you would refrain until the next week, but you wish to press the comments?
Because they were included in this week's packet, and they are
So we
already
have them already.
public documents, and there have been accusations made that I would like to address that Mrs. Cook alluded to.
I wasn't able
Okay.
to finish what I was talking about.
Okay.
Just I want to clarity of process here. The notice from the letter from the Library Board of Trustees is not on our agenda. It was put in our packets and not in the online packet.
It is part of the online
Yeah,
packet.
it is part of the online packet.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm just not sure.
So the public has seen it. The
Yeah, the
public has seen
has
it.
seen it.
But for those people who watch at home, that's why I thought this would be the proper meeting
This is
to read
terrible.
it, because
It's
it's part of this meeting's
So
backup.
unfair.
Reading the open meeting.
Okay. It sounds like the speaker's going to press the comments over our request. Do you want to make a motion to overrule the chair?
I do not want the interview from the library to go first, because I think it's prejudicial to all. I think it's sort of it's backwards.
Okay.
It's not right.
So my next question is...
They're not being given a
I do
fair-
not... I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that was me. I do not intend to allow public comment during the interview session. So can I allow special standing to the library board to present the remarks after the interviews, but not allow anyone else from the public?
I don't believe so.
Probably not.
And if I could also, make a suggestion, it may be good process to recommend that, as many boards do, that if there is a written comment submitted, that not be then further read into the record. But if there are other comments, those can certainly be addressed in the public session. But typically, that's not, afforded to folks in the public session. If there's something in writing as part of the record, and that stands on its own.
But this is the public forum, and someone is asked to speak to us. And it
But it's
is
already
a
in the
matter of a
record.
public record. This letter is part of our agenda. So I don't really see why it's on the agenda.
If I may, Counselor, I think it's simply a matter of efficiency, that most boards will not both take the written comment and then have it read in just to keep the process moving along. It's certainly part of the record. It is part of the minutes of this meeting already having been submitted. And obviously comments beyond that, could be afforded to the speaker. But typically, that's not permitted.
But Counselor, typically, when we have an open forum and someone comes and wants to speak, we let them speak. It's part of our governance policy. It's part of our policy. So if Carol wants to speak, I think that we should allow it. We allow everyone else to come up and speak at our public forum. So just because maybe some counselors may not like what she's going to say, doesn't mean that we should stop it.
I think you're missing the point from what I heard the solicitor say, which was it's already in the record, it's available, it's online, it's in the record. It doesn't have to,
Why don't you want her to read it?
It's already in there, it's in the record.
Right, so
why
if she says
repeat
it out loud, what is the difference?
Well, I guess we could say the same thing as why was it done before, and why are you so interested in having it read when the poor applicants haven't had a chance to even speak yet, which, whether it's good or bad, I think it's very unfair to the applicants to already have a preconceived idea about, how this is going to go or not go. I don't think it's very fair at all. If I was brand new to this and that was being done to me, I would not apply for anything. We have enough problems with people not applying for boards, and it seems to be like if you don't like someone, or if you don't want someone on a board, this is the type of behavior that goes on. And
Donna, that's quite an accusation.
There was a proposal almost like this during the CRC, where you would have a chairperson and decide whether they were going to like it or not, and all of a sudden the town council was kind of taken out of it. And also what was said was that if they didn't feel that they would get along with people, we didn't want someone to quit, so we wouldn't really want them on the board.
This is out of order, because I have no recollection of what this woman is talking about. This is out of order.
I just want to say, usually, public comment, somebody signs up to speak, they get to speak, we don't ask them any questions, they say their piece, and they go sit down, and that's it, over and done. I think that's what we should do, we should follow that procedure. If we're not going to, then we're getting away from what our policy has been.
Stop it.
This is different, Joe. This is
Okay.
about someone
All right.
coming up
So-
here and not having a chance.
Don, I
gonna
agree
vote
with,
for him anyway.
I agree with everything you're saying on substance, but I think the right thing to do is to follow the open forum procedure, and I'd like to know if you want to take a motion to overrule the chair.
Trish, I'm telling you.
I'll make a motion to overrule the chair.
Does that need a second? Okay, we have a motion. Will there be a second on the procedural question to overrule the chair? Second call? Okay, hearing none, the motion will stop in its tracks, and we'll proceed to hear Ms. Herman.
Thank you. Memo to Tiverton Town Councilors. 1, the Tiverton Public Library Board of Trustees wholeheartedly recommends the reappointment of trustee Kim Sutherland. She has never missed a meeting since her initial appointment and is always prepared and respectfully willing to debate issues. Because of her outstanding contributions to this board in her short time with us, she was elected board secretary at our September 2018 meeting. 2, on January 23, 2019, the board held a special meeting to meet the 2 declared applicants for the vacant seat on our board. We spent 30 minutes in discussion with each candidate. Ms. Amanda Cody had sent her CV and a personal statement describing her feelings about Tiverton Public Library and libraries in general in advance of our meeting. This is attached. Ms. Cody moved to Tiverton 2 years ago, and our library is one of the reasons that she and her husband chose our town. As a communications professional, she feels that our long-range plan, which she was well prepared to discuss, was attainable and realistic. She visits the library every week to borrow books and attend programs, and is co-coordinator of a writing group that meets regularly at the library. Mr. Richard Rahm tells us that he believes that Tiverton needs to do more to help school children, and that library programs in math and science are the way to do that. As a trustee, his top two priorities would be to request $20,000 from the Budget Committee to implement such a program and to advocate for free speech on library premises. He had not read the library long-range plan. He says that he believes the library is, quote, more than Tiverton can handle, end quote, and that he objects to his personal taxes being spent on the library. If he were appointed as a trustee, he would advocate that the library not follow the town charter based on an incident relating to the board's decision to heed the town attorney's advice in canceling his wife's room reservation for a political campaigning event, which is not allowed to happen on town property in accordance with the town charter. A major concern we have with Mr. Rahm is that he was the subject of several incident reports filed in the past year due to his verbal harassment of library staff and his belligerent behavior toward them. We believe the ability to interact respectfully with staff is an essential characteristic of an effective board member. Mr. Rahm's final comment to us after our meeting was, quote, "I always like a good confrontation," close quote. Based on our discussions with the two candidates, the Board of Trustees unanimously voted to recommend the appointment of Ms. Amanda Cody. Not only does she possess the communication and community outreach skills specifically mentioned as a priority in our long-range plan, we feel that her life stage as a young professional will bring the viewpoint of an underrepresented demographic to our board and the library. Signed, Kathy Cleese Clarendon, Chair, Tiverton Public Library Board of Trustees. At this point, I'd like to address Mr. Katz's concerns raised in an email to our chair that the library board may have discussed scheduling the interviews outside of a board meeting. I can assure you, Mr. Katz, and the rest of the town council, that that was not the case. At our January 14th meeting, we voted to add an item to our agenda for discussion purposes only, a practice that is allowed under the open meetings law. This item was the applicants for the board openings and our interviewing of them. Our chair shared with us that there were two candidates for the open position. Rather than interview them by herself, which was the practice when she was appointed, she wanted to give the trustees the opportunity to also participate in the interviews, and she asked us if there was interest. There was interest in that, so our chair shared with us that she would call a special meeting to hold the interviews. I said I would poll the trustees via email as to their availability for that special meeting. This is a practice also permitted under the open meetings law. So we scheduled that special meeting and held it. As to Mr. Katz's assertion that our interviews and making a recommendation to the town council is, in his words, inappropriate, I think that's a topic that the town council should discuss among themselves, and it's not something that Mr. Katz should try to debate with our chair in an email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up will be Mr. Peter Monez, public announcement, tax preparation, I think this is. Mr. Monez?
Okay. Good evening,
I will
all.
hold you to 3 minutes.
3
Not
minutes,
tonight,
yes.
anyway. No, you can take all you want.
I'm going to be quick. I hope I bring some good news here, because it's a free service for the town residents and people of Rhode Island, and basically the whole nation. Starting in February, the tax season starts, and under the sponsorship of AARP and the training that is given by that group, free tax preparations will be given in the town for Tiverton residents and also Little Compton residents and Rhode Island residents, and even some Massachusetts residents, believe it or not. So you'll find this in our local library. We are IRS certified, and we volunteer our time for this training and for this service. We'll be working for you, and we work hard to make sure that every tax credit and deduction you earn is included in your tax return, especially for the senior citizens in the town, is the state property tax relief, which is This year, $365 if they qualify. It's a free service, there's no fees. We welcome everybody, and I'll wrap it up. We offer tax preparations to anyone of any age, especially if you are 50 or older or can't afford paid tax preparations. It will be done in the Tiverton Library starting Wednesday and Thursday, February 6th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Thank you.
And just to repeat, that was, let's get the date and time again, Tiverton Library
Yes.
from 10 a.m. to 3 on what day?
We do Wednesdays and Thursdays, starting February 6th.
Starting all the way to April 15th?
Right,
or-
April
okay.
10th, which is probably the last
Okay.
days, and then before April 15th.
You don't
You're
have,
on extension like I am every year. That's-
you don't have to make an appointment, just show up.
You just walk in. Sometimes, though, there's a big crowd, so you might have to have patience to wait around. Bring a book, use the library books, papers. And if it goes over the time, we can take your name and get you on a list. So the next day, you'll be the first one to be, well, I'll say interviewed and get your taxes done. And we also, like I said already too, we do also do the Rhode Island taxes with the federal.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. We have no formal public hearings tonight, so we're going to proceed to some interviews. We're going to have, first, the planning board. We have two, if I'm reading this right, two unexpired 3-year terms to expire in July of 2021. I think that made sense. And first, if we have Ms. Amanda Souza, please, if you'd like to join us. If you'd like to have a seat, make yourself comfortable.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for coming out here, and I usually just open it up and just ask if you want to share a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in the position, and then basically it'll just be an open floor, 5-10 minutes, something along those lines.
Okay.
I think is probably the right amount of time. Take it away, thank you.
Sure. So my name is Amanda Souza. I've lived in Tiverton for, I think, like over 10 years now. I'm from Portsmouth originally. I work at a company in Middletown in the accounting department. I've been doing accounting since I was 19. I'm 35 now. Well, I don't know. Let's see, what else? I'm on the juvenile hearing board currently. I've been on that for the past couple years, and I really enjoy that. I just started, one of the Tiverton residents started a trash walking group. So we went down the other day underneath the Saconnet River Bridge, and we cleaned up over there. So I'm hoping to do more cleanup work in Tiverton. I volunteered at Forever Paws before. I volunteered at the library before. I do a lot.
Can you just speak a little bit maybe about the planning board and
Yeah,
what interests you about that?
I noticed that there's a lot of land being sold lately, and a lot of buildings going up, and I wanted to do something to try to keep Tiverton more green. I don't know if that's kind of like a bias, but I really love Tiverton, and I love the feel of it. I love the land. I love the farm feel, and I think if we keep tearing down a lot of the plots, we're not going to have that. So I also offered up my time to the Tiverton Land Trust as well. So I can hopefully start helping them in some way, either with accounting work or maybe fundraising. But my ultimate goal is to try to keep Tiverton greener. So any way I can do that, I'm going to try.
Purple this week.
Yeah,
We'll get the green
purple.
next week.
I got it.
Anybody, open floor?
Have you attended any planning board meetings? Have you been to any?
No. So this is all kind weirdly enough, was on a Facebook thread, and I was wondering how I could start making a difference, and someone had said that the planning board was open, and it might be a good start for me to kind of go in the right direction.
I'm just, are we? No. Oh, so are you at all familiar with, have you looked into the comprehensive plan for Tiverton that was?
Yeah, I've looked
Okay.
into some of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I understand your desire to keep it green.
I know.
There are some issues now before the town, like the solar thing.
Yeah, I understand that.
The business, getting business sector going and stuff. Would you be comfortable helping with those issues too, or you?
Yeah, I'm totally for solar. I don't have anything against it. Anything that's environmentally friendly, I mean, I'm definitely open to. I'm open to anything if it makes sense. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to put something that, I don't know, a big nuclear waste facility in Tiverton. You know what I mean? I mean, I think we should kind of steer clear of something like that. But if it's going to benefit Tiverton and the residents, then I'm open to hearing about it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm just,
Kind of.
I just think there's this sort of tension going on, or that between, helping the business environment.
Right.
Keeping the scenic, the green, the tourism.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of issues going on, and I just wonder how open you'll be to.
I think I'm pretty neutral. I mean, I do love the feel of Tiverton being green, but I understand that we still, I don't know if I should say it, but I voted for the casino. So I'm in between. If it makes sense for the town and it's going to be profitable for the town and it's going to help people in the town, then I'm for it.
Okay.
I know some people probably aren't happy with the casino, but I thought it would
It was almost
bring business
50/50,
in.
and I can't speak for everyone, but I think it was a lot had to do with tax relief.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, I just have one question. I usually ask people, have you looked at the charter for where the planning board is and what the responsibilities are?
I did read some of it, yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
So, hi Amanda, thank you for coming. And I will say this, it's very refreshing that you're up here and sort of saying what you think and what your perspective is. I think it's nice to see in an applicant. Joe already asked one of my standard questions, which is, have you been to a planning board meeting? And Mrs. Driggs asked the other one about the comprehensive plan. So, since we're not voting tonight, here would be my request to you if you haven't. Because I think there is a planning board meeting before our next meeting.
Okay.
The planning board, in my opinion, is one of the most important boards that we have in town, and it entails a lot of responsibility. And the planning board is, it's not a board where you kind of can show up once or twice a month and, decide, well, gee, that looks good, I'll vote for it, or it doesn't. The really best planning board members, in my opinion, are the ones that are willing to put some work into it, because you need to develop some technical skills, and you need to know the comprehensive plan, and there's some learning that goes on that's involved. And I think that, those are the members that we need the most, the people who have the time and the willingness to, roll up their sleeves and become as educated as they can. So my only request to you would be, if you can, to try and attend a planning board meeting between now and the next council meeting, and, talk to a couple of the members and see what kind of work's involved, and make sure that that's what you have time and want to do.
Yeah.
And just make sure that you know what you're getting into, I guess, would be the best way to put it. And, and if you're still interested, that's great.
Yeah.
But, for some people, being a good planning board member is sometimes a little bit more of a time commitment than they had in mind initially. So I just like folks to kind of know and be sure they are willing to roll up their sleeves and do that level of work.
Absolutely.
So thank you. And I know that the chair and the is here tonight, and I'm sure she'd be happy to tell you when the next planning board meeting is, so you could visit.
I did have one question. It sounds, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing what you say, it sounds like you're interested in somewhat restricting development in the town. Is that a fair characterization?
I'm open to it.
To development or restriction?
Yeah, to development and restriction. I'm neutral, I guess you would say. It just would depend on the situation. Like the solar, I'm for. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I've heard it, some people aren't a fan of it, but.
But a lot of the building that you'll see in town will be residential or even commercial, but we're talking about lots that people own, and then they have a right to sell it, and then the buyer has a right to develop it.
Absolutely.
So how would you balance that versus the goal of keeping Tiverton as
greener?
it is?
I guess it depends on, I mean, there's a lot of factors. I know behind my house currently, right now, behind Ledger Lane, the person has cleared the area, and then there's another person that cleared another area at the bottom. I'm not so, I mean, the bottom, I don't mind. It's not a big deal, but I think the area in between the houses, I'm not really for the land to be built on there. So I was actually thinking of talking with the person that owns the property and seeing if maybe there's a way I can fundraise or open him up to the Tiverton Land Trust to see if maybe he would want to donate the property or something like that. Because I think in an area like that, I think it would be just too congested to put as many houses as it's zoned for on that property.
So, well, I'm all for that approach of private activity. If you don't want somebody to develop a lot of land, you buy it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I used to do construction in Newport, and the people with the mansions would buy this very expensive property just so nobody could build there, and it always seemed like an excessive thing to me, but if that's the way to go about it. But a role on the planning board would have significantly more leverage to use government power to force people not to develop. Is that, when it comes to that?
I wouldn't want to force anyone. That's definitely not my approach whatsoever. I mean, everyone deserves a fair hearing, right? So, I mean, it just depends on every situation. Like the guy at the bottom, there's plenty of room. He's not interfering with anyone. It's not congesting anything. You know what I mean? So, it's just every situation is different. Am I going to deny someone just because I just want to conserve all the land? No.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out here and apply, and we can help get you the date of that next planning board meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I don't have them all numbered.
It's February 5.
February 5th, which is a Tuesday. I think
Okay.
it's Tuesday.
And it's here?
Yes.
Here,
Yes,
Okay.
these days.
7.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
The police.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Mr. Raymond Fougere. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, Mr. Fougere called and said he's on a business trip, and so he's unable to make it tonight.
Very well. All right, well, let's move on to the library then. We have three interviews, Ms. Kim Sutherland, Ms. Amanda Cody, and Mr. Richard Rahm. Is Ms. Kim Sutherland available? Great. Good evening, thanks for coming out. If you just watched what happened, same question, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself in general, and then what interests you about the position. This is, of course, a reappointment, so you probably have some kind of particular insight on that, but...
Sure.
And then I guess it'll be open floor.
Sure. I'm an almost lifelong resident of Tiverton, 40-something years here. I'm a special needs teacher in New Bedford and a regular user of the library. and I co-facilitate a writing group at the library once a month, which is a lot of fun. Working on the library board has been very exciting. Since June, I came in at a time when the library was in a state of flux. We were looking for a new director. A lot of things were being done. It was a very exciting time to begin. So I kind of dove in and got started right away. Now we have a fabulous director, and I've been really fortunate to help with a lot of great things that are happening at the library. We're on track to hopefully be open again on Tuesday mornings, which would be fantastic. The budget's looking pretty good. We've been able to rehire for some positions where people had left. So things are coming together for the library, and I feel like that I'm just getting started, so I would like to be reappointed.
Wonderful. Open floor.
So Kim, where to start? You've been there since August, is that what you said, or July?
June or July, I think.
July or something? Okay. And are you familiar, or have you gotten into the library's long-range plan document?
Yes.
With their goals and
Yes.
stuff? And this partly comes from my time being on the budget committee. And you're probably aware, living in the town, this town is very polarized over increasing property taxes, and that's been a real struggle for the library in their demands for funds. And when I sort of looked over their long-range goals, it sounded like there was an awful lot of expanding they were going to be doing, expanding programs, expanding hours open, expanding the services, expanding book collections, customer service, and yet the library itself admitted that they were well aware of this polarization and were looking for additional sources of revenue.
Right.
And so are you on that agenda? Do you understand what the tension has been sort of in the, the
Certainly, I've lived in
library's
town long
need?
enough that that I understand
Okay.
what's going on with that. I think
Okay.
that what's on that long-range plan is definitely doable. And a
Through-
lot of it isn't so much that needing more funds, a lot of it is just kind of rearranging how we do things. We have a very young, very enthusiastic director who has kind of just taken the bull by the horns when she came into the library, and already has updated us on some of the things in our long-range plan that we were concerned with that she's already working on. So I don't see that. I mean,
when
every
I hear-
department comes in for, and asks for money with the budget, but the money is not the main driving force of that 5-year plan.
But it sounds like at least the goal number 6 was really to have somebody who could do grant writing, charitable contributions, look for endowments. I know just increasing the number of people working there would have been a breaking point. That's how close it is. So, but you're aware of that, and have you ever done grant writing or?
Yes, I have.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Anybody else want to? We can't let you off too easy. Come on, we got another question out there.
We
Joe?
already know she goes to the meeting, so.
It is a reappointment.
I am aware of the plan.
She knows what she's getting into already, so.
Those of us who are here for the first appointment already,
Yeah.
already interview. I do have a question, though, from Madam Clerk. Is there something odd about the timing of this I seem to remember in this appointment that we were going to do this reappointment earlier.
I believe Ms. Sutherland was
yep.
appointed in June
I was
for an
finishing a term.
unexpired term,
Right.
which ended October 15th of 2018. And at the time, when I went back to the minutes, it actually quotes me as saying we could put her on the consent agenda, but that did not happen in October. So,
So we should have done this reappointment should have come up in October then, right?
Well, it could
I mean,
have, but it did not.
It didn't, but it should have. That was our, somehow on this end, we didn't, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
I did have
Our
some.
fault.
That's okay, I was happy to sub.
Starting to wonder if we need a ratifying vote, but I guess we can look into that. But Mr. Katz.
When I was on the budget committee, did the tour of the library, and I happened upon at least one video game that I found particularly disturbing. I wanted to get into details, but if you could give me some indication of what your philosophy is on collecting materials, purchasing or accepting materials for the library, especially those that'll be played on a screen that's open in front of children and that sort of thing.
I think as far as the ones that are projected in the library, that children are coming with their parents. So if their parents find it objectionable, I'm going to assume that they're not going to allow their children to watch or play whatever it is. I am not aware of, I don't play the video games at the library. I'll have to ask my son. But I'm not aware of what's in the video game collection. But I'm glad you asked that question, because now it'll prompt me to look.
Right. Well, this particular one was a game called Deadpool. He's a superhero, so to speak, and there were scenes where,
Right.
very graphic and violent and sexual ways that seemed objectionable to me, and my understanding was children could go take this out. I don't believe there was an ID checked, and then there's a big screen in the teen area that they could go and just play them right there, which prompted the question.
I don't know the answer to your question, but I would be glad to find out.
Okay. So you weren't on the trustees in 2016.
No, I was not.
You may be aware, though, of there was a charter complaint, and the argument of the Board of Trustees and the Town Council agreed with them as a finding of fact that the Library Board of Trustees is not subject to the town's charter. Is that your view?
No, it is not my view.
So, in that regard, I happen to know the library is not mentioned in the charter. Would you be willing to support a charter change to explicitly make the library subject to the town charter?
If it has to be, yes. What happened? I know that what happened recently with questions about whether or not we're part of the charter is that the fact remains that we are on town property. And so I think that that's where a lot of the confusion and controversy came in, with not allowing political parties to hold campaign events at the library, because those are not allowed on school property or town hall property. So really, it was the solicitor at the time. We asked him his opinion, and there is that balance between First Amendment rights and having this law, this law on the books that town property cannot be used in this manner. So yeah, next time charter comes around, I would be happy to run again. And
What do you wish for?
So, were you involved in the decision-making at all for the rejection of that meeting?
For this past time, yes.
And what was your position on that?
My position was that we should follow the advice of the town solicitor.
So, so you found it to be a political event, and despite it being a library, free speech.
It was it's a judgment call, but when you don't have the background yourself as an attorney and you have to rely on somebody who has that knowledge, then yes.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Sure.
We made the questions harder at the end, so. Okay, well, thank you again for
Can I just ask one more question? I was, and I'm actually curious now that you've been there for a couple of months. I've always been sort of struck when you go in the library of the dearth of books, frankly. And I was very interested when I read through the long-range plan and the comments people made.
Yes.
And two things really stuck out. One were the number of people who commented, books, we need fiction books, we need nonfiction books, we need, Newport, we go to Newport because we can't get them at Tiverton.
Right.
The other thing that really struck out, and I think is sort of serious, because is the children's section. The number of people who commented on how unfriendly it is for children, rigid, strict, and parents can't come in, and there's waiting lists for the story group. And is this something that the library is taking seriously?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that many of the problems with the children's room have already been remedied. Because as you said, you look at it and that's kind of striking. And so that was striking to the board as well. We have a different mindset, I guess you could say, for how we're doing events in the children's library area. Our patrons seem much happier now with the way it's going.
Okay.
There's more room for everybody. As far as the dearth of books, as you put it, I agree with you 100%. That's why that's in our long-range plan to fix that. Something that has been helpful is the ability for us to have the ebook exchange and the borrowing from other libraries.
Yeah.
But we also realize that we have this big, beautiful library and we have shelves that are empty that we need to fill because there are books that are not available that our patrons are asking for.
You do, and
part of the problem was that we had a change in leadership, which took much longer than I think the board was anticipating. But the applicants we had at first weren't right for the Tiverton library. So the personnel committee chose not to hire any of the people in the first round. So we put out another bid for applicants, and we found Catherine Damiani, who now holds the job. Now that she's in and she's got her feet wet and things are going well, this is something that is a priority for her. Also, we lost our adult services librarian, left for another town, and we are currently hiring a new adult librarian. So I think that once that's in place.
Her or him to the classics. But, I mean, I was there also when Justin was there in the children's room, but it was really a teenager room. And the videos that were available for probably
Are
kids
you sure that you were
positive, and the kids who probably did not have a parent with them, it really was sort of shocking, and it was a big issue in 2016.
Because, we have a children's room and we have a teen room.
Well, maybe this was the teen room.
Okay.
But still, these were...
Okay, I just don't want anybody to think that there are 5-year-olds taking up
No,
that pool.
but I wouldn't want a 13-year-old looking at this stuff either, so, okay.
Well, I feel like I go to the library a lot. I did not know I could get a video game there, so that was my...
Not a game.
Well, that you're going to have to hang
Sort
out in
of
the teen
porn.
room.
I don't think I'll pass for a teenager.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you again for taking the time.
Sure.
Thanks, Kim.
Sure.
Okay, our next brave soul, Miss Amanda Cody, are you with us tonight?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Have a seat. Thanks again. Probably got an idea of what the drill is, but if you want to just share a little about yourself, just in general, and then what, of course, interests you about the position.
Sure. So I am relatively new to Tiverton. It'll be almost 2 years since I purchased my home. And since I've moved in, I've been looking for ways to be involved in the town and in surrounding towns. So I work over at Portsmouth Abbey School. And I volunteer also for the VFW Auxiliary in Portsmouth. And through there, I was actually a Tiverton resident that recommended that I volunteer there. And I also started a writing group, which I co-run with Kim in the library. And when I learned of the vacancy here, I thought this is a good way to sort of take it to the next level, take my volunteering to the next level, and really be involved in something that can be impactful and meet members of my community in ways that I wouldn't be able to before.
Why don't we open it up to any more specific questions? I think you had the benefit of, I don't know if you'd like to comment on anything you heard before, that's also fair. We went pretty deep into many of those topics.
I just wanted to ask if you knew any of the history of the Union Library at all?
A little bit, based on my research. I actually, when I first moved here, I thought that was the library. I didn't realize that when we were, looking at the town, and I thought we passed it by, and I said, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then I found out there was the new library. But I think it's an important function, and I think that I have to learn a little bit more about it. But I think that my understanding of the way the two coexist now, I kind of like that setup, and I would like to keep that going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I can't let you off this easy, so I better come up with another question.
I have one too.
Oh, do you? Oh, go ahead.
I do. So, Amanda, it sounds to me like you're fairly high-speed when it comes to social media and as well as, outreach and communications. So do you see those skills as being something that you can help apply at the library?
I think so. Professionally, I have been part of a team that's done rebranding, and I think that can be helpful, especially for goal number 2 in the long-range plan. I've done, I run our school's social media accounts now, so I'm aware of that double-edged sword and how it can be great, and it can also be the absolute worst. And it's all about sort of the message and how you put it out there. And I'm sure the library staff is also tasked with this and is also doing their best to help, and I think I can just offer some professional insight on that as well.
Okay. And I see you have some background in fundraising too as well.
I do, yes.
Which is something that I think that the library wants to take on, the ability to do some more fundraising and grants and possibly endowments.
Yes, I've done grant writing and I've worked in development offices for colleges.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to cover some of the same ground.
Sure.
Just as, because you haven't been on a library board before, Ms. Sutherland has. As a general proposition, what do you think should be the balance on providing materials to people versus making sure that those materials are appropriate and that sort of thing?
Like in terms of video games that we were discussing before.
Yeah.
So video games, like movies, as far as I understand, have ratings on them, and I think it's fair to sort of implement ID checks when that's happening. I think it's also fair that we rely on parents' discretion, but if it's going to be displayed in a public area, if it's going to be played on a screen, I think that an ID check is an absolute fair thing to do. Just as if no one can play an R-rated movie in the library on a screen, it should be the same with a game.
And are you familiar at all with the structure of town government and the charter and how the library relates to that? And
yeah, a little bit. I think I can lean on our current current trustees for advice and guidance in that direction, and I think it'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but you have to start somewhere.
So do you think the library should be subject to the town charter and that sort of thing?
It's kind of a tough question.
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that at this moment without really knowing in depth the town charter. I would be glad to do some research and come back to you if you'd like me to, sort of email you or get back to you on that.
Okay. And as far as the use of meeting spaces, how, the advice of our former solicitor notwithstanding, how open do you think a meeting space should be as far as people being permitted to use that space if they're residents of the town?
Well, I know the trustees' bylaws have, and they have language in about it, meeting spaces, and the Tiverton Library has a link to policies for the meeting spaces. I think if there ever is a question that arises, I think it would be fair to defer to the legal experts. I don't have a background in law, so I would leave that to those who know the law.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, I really want to, again, thank you for coming out and spending the time and sharing those comments, and I think that's all we have tonight.
Okay, thank you
Great,
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Okay, and our our final applicant tonight, our final interview tonight is Mr. Richard Rahm. You do it.
I'm getting some water.
Okay.
He was right there.
Fine.
I thought he took off.
I do want to, like the others, I want to thank you for coming out, and in some ways, I guess you have the advantage of having watched a couple interviews before you, but I do want to be very clear, and of course, I'm only speaking for myself, not the entire council, but my decision on that was on procedure only, and I don't in any way endorse the comments that were made about you, and I think they're frankly inappropriate, but because of the ruling of the open forum, I just wanted you to hear that from me, speaking just for me, not for everybody else. So you do not need to address those. If you choose to, you may. And we're not going to take any public comment on this. So, but I'd like to at least kick it off with the same type of questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what interests you in the position. You probably have a good idea at least what Justin's going to ask you, but we'll open it up from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I came to Tiverton in 2004, and I've been a resident here ever since. I'm a retired engineer, software engineer, and one of the things that piqued my interest first at the library was technology. I wanted to bring technology to Tiverton, to the library. I felt that our town has needs, and one of those needs, and I've been very critical of our educational systems, is here in Tiverton, is our test results, especially in math and science. And that bothers me. It bothers me a lot. So I kind of take the approach of Kaiser. Kaiser said, find a need and fill it. And I kept thinking, you know what? The town of Tiverton needs help with our test scores, with our math performance. Can the library fill that need? And I thought that would be an excellent role for the library to take on, and an excellent way for me to get involved in the library and help out my town. I know when I worked for my former employer, Raytheon, they took it very seriously, and they poured millions of dollars into math programs throughout the state of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Math is the cornerstone to technology. And that's what I want to bring to the library. And that's why I'm here. In part of the statement by the library in regards to my interview specifically stated that I wanted to help school children, and I do, but more specifically in math. And at that interview, and by the way, I want to thank Donna for your efforts to control the process here. But I am glad that Carol read the assessment of my library interview so that I can set the record straight. There were certain things that she said in her statement that I agree with. She mentioned that she mentioned that my wife's meeting was canceled. But it was not my wife's meeting. It was a town-wide invite for everyone. And another thing, in that statement that she read, she blindsided me when she said they have on file, let me see if I can't get it straight here. She said that they have on file that I have been belligerent at the library and caused confrontation with the staff. That was the very first time I had ever heard of that. And I find it disturbing that they have files, secret files on town citizens, to the point where it's, I think I'll do my best to see if we can get an investigation going as to what files do they have on people. I don't think I have a file at the police department. I've never been belligerent. I always promote respect. I ask for respect. I know. And then I also said I like a good confrontation. Confrontation moves issues forward. It's not violence, but it's to confront your problems. You often hear of political bodies being in a confrontation. They're not fighting. They're trying to resolve issues. And when you're in conference, right, when you're in confrontation, it's not necessarily bad. When I see these three in conflict or in confrontation with these four, I don't think it's bad. I think it's really good. I wish that there was more respect, not from the board, but from the crowd. I don't like the outpouring. I like it when people just listen, you know. Everybody's going to, I think our president does an excellent job at allowing people to speak. And that's what I meant. I don't mean to be belligerent, and I haven't been belligerent. And I take exception to that. I find her statement slanderous. But I'd also like to point out that we need diversity on the board. And when I went to the interview, I knew there was going to be a confrontation. And it was fun. The interview was actually fun. I got out of there and I felt refreshed. I felt I had a good chance to present my case. And I felt that they were going to not recommend me because I'm not like them. I'm not like them at all. What I am is an engineer with a learning disability. I can't read very well at all. All right? So do you think I spent much time in the library? No, I didn't. But I see the opportunity for the library to bring forth a very good thing that I am in a perfect position to bring forth. I'm very good at math. All right? That's how I got through engineering curriculum. It was through tons and tons of math. I can help. I also said that they also asked me, well, would you advocate? Would you go and advocate for more funding? And I found that a very interesting question. I kept thinking, why don't you just use the FTR? You know, we always think of the FTR as going to lower taxes, lower taxes. That FTR can be used to raise your taxes too. There's nothing that says you can't put a huge budget in for the library. And if you convince the people and they vote for it, ta-da, there it is. But I told him I would be willing. I would be willing to advocate for more budget, specifically for a math program, to bring math and science, not necessarily science, but math first. I'd also like to see GED, but I go astray here. So I see I see a lot of opportunities for our library. And I would ask that when you read the statement, I'm sure you all have, understand that it was a confrontation. It was a good confrontation. They know what they're getting in me. I am going to question everything. It's not going to be easy for them to get stuff through. As far as the First Amendment rights go in the library, and should the library follow the town charter, the answer is absolutely no. All right? Especially when it comes to the First Amendment rights and the scheduling of those rooms. As you three know, the town charter does not trump the United States Constitution. We all know that. That is a very easy decision to make. But when it came time to cancel, when it came time between a meeting of the Republican Party to have people come and talk, the library weighs, oh, I got the Constitution of the United States over here and the town charter over here. Which one? I go with the town charter. Now, that's a decision, a foolish decision, all right? The town charter does not trump the United States Constitution at all, ever. One of you brought up the fact, nowhere in the charter is the library ever mentioned, and it shouldn't be, because that library needs to be a free speech zone. And you know what? Lawn signs are free speech. We should have lawn signs. A place, I know, and you know, back in 2016, Denise, I saw that and I thought, no, you shouldn't be having that lawn sign. And then halfway through that, I go, yes, you should have lawn signs up. Yeah, there's, you know, you don't have, you know, you have the right of free speech. Now, what we also have to balance is, just because you have the right of free speech doesn't mean I have to listen to you, all right? So there comes a point where maybe we should have like one spot in the library where everybody can put up their lawn sign, you know, put a little mailbox up there like real estate agents do to put your flyer out. And we would have free speech returning to our library. And that's my position on that. I read, when it came time to, you know, they asked me had I read the long-term plan. I said no, but I read it today, and the first sentence that I started reading, and I got deja vu. And it turns out I had read the the 5-year plan. It's not a very good plan. But and the reason I got deja vu is because the first sentence says the mission of the Tiverton Library Service is to be an essential resource for personal growth and community enrichment. There's a word here, essential. If we don't have that, if we don't have the library, well, you can't grow. You know, somebody didn't think that through. It should have been a key resource for personal growth. Then in the last sentence, it says, as a vital part of the town, the town will die without the library. No, the town will not die without the library. Our library can serve a very good purpose. I'd like to expand it. I'd like to expand it so that it's almost an essential resource. I'd like to expand it so it starts teaching math. And once we get math, we get science, we help our schools, we help our kids.
Richard,
Go ahead, I'm done, I think.
I'm very interested, because two things you've brought up. One is the question of diversity, and clearly in our charter, in terms of, one of the things we look for is varying levels of experience, long-term continuity of knowledge, new volunteers, and fresh perspectives. And when I heard you talk about wanting, and I'm glad to get your perspective on it, wanting to put the math and, what was the other one, math and
science.
And science.
Math is your first step,
okay.
And it's the big one.
So Tiverton's in dire need of that. The students need help.
Yes, they do.
But when you look at the goals and objectives, the first goal is just to increase public access to the library, fine, you know, new hours, new people. Objective 3, explore possibility of providing technology classes at the senior center. So it's not off their radar, but the audience is the wrong audience. And when it gets into library services, they're talking about, I think it's goal 3, offer a wider variety of programs such as yoga, exercise class, advanced technology skills, website design, marketing, digital photography, music and art lessons. Somewhere in there needs to be a space for the kind of thing you're thinking about. And so I'm glad you brought that up as a need and something that the library would be in a position to satisfy. And I appreciate that, and I think you bring that skill. And what was the other thing? Sort of full disclosure, Richard and I were on the Charter Review Commission together, and I did get to know Richard, and Richard is Richard. But I have to tell you, in working with him on a committee, which would be part of what Board of Trustees are working, it's a group. You have your positions, but you're not unreasonable. You're solid in what you believe, but you're not foolhardy, and you're not rigid. So I just want to put that out there, that I've had a year working with you, and you were you believed what you believed, but you listened to the other side always, and you were rational in seeing another way to do something. So I just want the people to know that.
Thank you.
I have disclosure also. I know Richard, and I worked on the Charter Review Commission with him, and he was very nice to work with. We didn't always agree, but it was always very pleasant. I mean, you could get his side, or I'd give my side, and I think there's nothing better than an exchange of ideas that isn't in a hateful way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just enjoyed having him on the CRC. I also, for disclosure, I was on the Town Republican Committee. What bothered me was that when they speak of, I was kind of offended the way the minutes or the minutes of the interview went when they referred to Laura Rahm, who's absolutely delightful, very good leader, always gives her time to the town to take notes and being helpful, to refer as a wife, like some appendage. I just thought that was kind of degrading. My point is that what Laura was trying to do and Richard were trying to do was present to the public a nonpartisan candidate night. That's all it was. Everybody was invited. Whether they turned it down or not isn't the issue. The issue was it was for everyone. And it was canceled at the last minute and caused such chaos. So, anyway, I just don't, I find Richard to be very delightful to work with. He's not confrontational. He's very strong on his beliefs of freedom of speech and that sort of thing. But he is very delightful, and I don't think we should be frightened of other people's or different perspectives. I think that brings something new to the table, and I always think that's a good thing to have, a diversity of thought. It's a very good thing.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look to the other side of the table. Any questions? Or?
Richard, have you ever been involved in grant writing? I'm just curious because of the science and the math part of your
you can
belief.
ask my wife. I'm not a very good writer.
Yeah. I was just wondering
struggle.
because
I can do it, but I wouldn't enjoy something like
Yeah.
that.
I was just wondering because the math and science may be something we could get funded through grants. I was
Yes,
just wondering.
that's a possibility. And like I say, Raytheon, I believe General Dynamics also. Math is the cornerstone.
Thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on a math program? I mean, how you would work with the schools, and how would you attract kids to actually take advantage of a math program. I mean, one of the unfortunate things is that there are these programs out there, and they're just, the participation is very, very low. So could you tell me what you think could be done differently to have more kids participate, and how you would work with the schools?
School participation is critical. There are a lot of different math programs out there. I'm talking software programs. I'm not talking classroom program. And I think we need to take kind of a gradient. That's a math term. A gradient. They say dogs can find their way out of a burning building. Well, not really. What they do is they use gradients, and if they, they'll smell the air, and they go, oh, the smoke's not as bad over here, or they'll walk to over here, and they'll go, oh, the smoke isn't as bad over here, I'll walk over. They're following a gradient, okay? And I think that's what we have to do. In this case, we have to go out and get 20, 30 of these software programs. Let's see which one works the best, all right? And the one that works the best, we'll start using it. And maybe we might even find that, well, half of the kids do better with this one and half of them do better with that one. Another thing you have to do is you have to have somebody with a math background to work that program first, to know what it's trying to do, how it's trying to do it. To give you an example, my grandson, he's 6 years old. He does algebra. He doesn't know he's doing algebra, but he's doing it with his fingers. And it's clever. It's very clever what they have done. That he's learning how to add and subtract, right? And he doesn't memorize. He just does it by his finger. And then pretty soon, all of a sudden, he says, oh, yeah, a 9 minus 5, that's 4. You didn't see him stick up 9 fingers and then remove 4. He starts to learn that way. And that's the key to it, I think. Understand how the program works, and then help the student with the program. Some programs are going to be better than others. But to give you more details other than that, I don't have it. We need, we would need a special, and I screwed this up at the interview. We need a way of giving the library money, a one-time a grant of money that doesn't ratchet up their budget, right? And it doesn't become part of their budget until we prove this program can work. This program will work, right? So we keep it very low at $20,000. $20,000 would buy you maybe 2 computers and maybe 40, 50 licenses.
Okay.
Kind of like that.
All right. And I have a second question for you. While I'm all for free speech, I have to admit, I'm a little concerned with your philosophy of the library not adhering to the charter. It is a town-owned building, and whether there's a different determination, the legal determination so far have been that since it's a town-owned building, that it is subject to, it's a town asset and subject to the rules. So when you say that you think that, if it comes to the First Amendment or the town charter, that you don't have a problem with the library ignoring the charter for the First Amendment.
That's correct.
That's correct. So, and is that just on First Amendment things, or are there, do you think that the library or other parts of the government don't have to follow the charter when they're in conflict with something else?
This is a very good point for bringing up, Patricia. We're talking about Section 1208, right?
Mm-hmm.
1218. Did I say 1208?
It's okay.
It's
1218,
1218.
whatever.
We know that.
Well, I know, we know the section.
I read that, and in our charter review, we had discussions. I wish we had more. But Patricia, if you're out campaigning, right, and you're going door to door with your leaflets or whatever, and you walk on a city road.
I know, listen.
But that's, it needs to be articulated a lot better. What is applicable and what isn't.
That may be the case, but that's not the question. I mean, that wasn't my question. I was asking specifically as a potential board member, do you think that the library board of directors should follow the town charter and regarding free speech? So,
No.
Okay. I just wanted to,
May I say
clarify
something,
that.
Chair? Do you want to say
Yeah, I
something?
wanna-
Okay.
So I just want to,
Oh, sorry, were you all set?
I am, thank you.
I just want to clarify this. So you're suggesting, it seems to me, that the Board of Trustees comes up with a question where the town solicitor is saying that could generate a charter complaint, and on the other hand, there's the First Amendment. And you're suggesting, let's go with the First Amendment. Now,
Yeah.
somebody challenges that. It's a charter complaint, library use resources. It goes to a judge. The judge says, no, that fits within the framework of the Constitution. That's the way it is, right?
Yeah, I would have thought it would flow like that.
So you're not saying, let's throw away the charter. You're saying, when there's a doubt, we'll prioritize the First Amendment and see where the courts take it if it goes
Right,
there. Okay.
right. The charter does not trump the Constitution of the United States.
Right. And I want to explain for people who might not know, in 2016, there was a charter complaint because there were political materials inside the library, apparently in official card holders. Some members of the electors brought a complaint. The library's trustees' lawyers argued for quite some time the library is not subject to your charter. That council, including Councilor DiMadeira, said,
It's always me.
yeah, we're going to go with that and dismiss this charter complaint because the charter does not apply to the library. That was the ruling.
It was a little more than
This is my
that,
first time
though.
speaking with this.
Okay.
So then, this fall, apparently at some unpublished hint from the solicitor.
Mr. President, point of order, we're supposed to be interviewing Mr. Rom here, and now we're getting into the history of the library charter complaints, which we can take them back and back and
Another
back.
town council
I
that
just
did
wanted to ask
bad.
Mr. Rom, because he made a statement about, the library board of trustees following the charter, not to open up a political debate about the First Amendment.
No,
I just
I'm
wanted to
clarifying that
understand
his
his
position is what I think it is, and that takes some history for that. So then, with this group that you're involved with, the Tiverton Republican Town Committee, scheduled a meeting, apparently according to some hints from the solicitor that it might be contrary to the charter. They said, we are subject to the charter, and so it seems to me that there's depending who's asking what question, why, whether it applies to the charter gets a different answer, often without a written opinion from anybody. It's just sort of put out there, and I think that's worth clarifying. Is that your position on that?
Yes, I think we have to have clear delineation. When it comes to free speech, the charter, the library is not governed by the charter. Nowhere in the charter is the library ever mentioned. You don't have the authority to appoint a board of trustee that is given to you by the charter. It's given to you by state law.
Right, that part.
I don't know why, I just feel that there are portions of our charter that probably need some clarification with regards, and that's, in the interview, that's the one point where Carol and I almost agree on something.
She left it.
That the charter needs some help with the library's position. And I said, yeah, and we need to fight for it. You don't violate people's First Amendment rights. You change that charter. You clarify that charter.
Now, regarding the so-called letter of recommendation, I want to apologize to you. I think it's outrageous. that they would use this form of a recommendation that they have no authority to give. As you said, it's under state law, the town council appoints to the library board of trustees, and they use that to defame your character, and that is offensive to me. And I wanted to follow up. This letter, I contacted, when it was sent to me, I replied to the message and said, may I have copies of those incident reports? I never heard back. So you said tonight you haven't, you don't know about.
I didn't hear about this. I was just blindsided by this. When I finally got the letter, and I thought, what are they talking about? And it's on file.
So do you have any idea what the incident might have been, even
Yes.
theoretically?
I was the secretary of the Charter Review, and it was my responsibility to book the rooms and to make notifications. You have to be 24 hours, and that's an important. And in the Tiverton politics environment, it's highly charged, polarized. And I knew that not only do I have to make sure I follow the OMA laws, I have to be able to prove I followed them, okay? And that means when I go to post something, and they don't have a stamp like they do here in the town hall, that means you put the date, the time, and your initials on the corner. And now I can prove that I got it there, and this person right here signed and dated it. Well, the library, the receptionist there, thought that if she did that, she was agreeing with what was on the piece of paper. It was just an agenda. And I went round and round with her, telling her, no, it's not that you are agreeing, you're just receiving it. And it just got to be a nightmare. She wouldn't do it. And then finally, I said, all right, I'll take a picture of you signing it. And then they got all excited. Oh, you're taking pictures of the staff. So I deleted the picture. All it was a picture of her arm signing the piece of paper. Finally, they said, well, just put the piece of paper on the table, back away from it, because the camera's going to go off, and I'll take a picture of it. And that's what they are in reference to. And the interesting thing, Justin, is I posted at the town hall, I posted at the library, and I posted at the senior center. The only place that gave me trouble was the library.
So, in summary, you were an elected official on official duty. Out of the 3 places you went, one employee at one location gave you, let's say, a hard time.
A hard time.
In response to that, the library created, apparently, incident reports that you were not aware of, even though the website suggests you can appeal them. And then suddenly this springs up in the context of a letter of recommendation, sort of under political circumstances.
Right.
So that's the process of what created this outrageous.
I find her statement, the library's statement, almost slanderous, because they are trying to equate confrontation with belligerent, a belligerent behavior that they accuse me of, and then the very next sentence it says, oh, you like confrontation. But confrontation doesn't necessarily mean violence and disrespect. That's the one thing I always strive for, is respect. Confrontation, there's a lot of, people confront their problems. They confront their overweight. They confront all sorts of things. To confront, to enter into a confrontation is not violence. It moves things forward, okay? When you are in confrontation, you always speak clearly. You always try to get your point across. And what you need to do is be respectful. If you're respectful, you'll get a lot of things accomplished.
So, can we wrap this up, or does anybody, I guess you haven't had a chance, does anybody not have the chance to speak that wants to speak? Okay.
I just have a point,
Okay.
just a point about how this was done. Nothing against Kim Sutherland. She has nothing to do with how this went. She was just there. First of all, Her term expired 10/15. I don't know why that wasn't taken care of, but really, she was, after that, pretty much just a citizen. Then she took part, once again, Kim, it's nothing against you, because she didn't know any better. Took part in the interview, and then she voted to recommend the appointment of Miss Amanda Cody. It's kind of bizarre. I mean, she really was just a citizen, but she was also trying to get reappointed to the Board of Trustees. Oh, she didn't think she was doing anything wrong, and I'm not saying she was. But the people in charge probably should have known better. So, once again, Kim, it's nothing against you. It's just, I just don't understand why she was there.
Nancy,
go
Jeff, I
ahead.
asked one. Nancy, this has come up in the past because we're so busy and sometimes our agendas run long and we don't reappoint when their time has come. We've done this in the past and they've stayed on the board until we have advertised. Is that correct?
It's always been my understanding that they stay in position until they are replaced.
And I can remember that being repeated to me several times.
And I think it's in our policy. I'm not sure where it is.
I could probably try to find it, but
It is
All right,
absolutely the precedent.
let's just for...
it's definitely the precedent,
Yeah,
though, Donna.
well, let's just say that, okay. But the thing is she was also going for reappointment, so it was inappropriate, to say the least.
Okay.
That would be, with all due respect, you're entitled to that opinion. I don't think so. She was a reappointment. I believe at our meeting, because it was a short appointment, and we discussed putting it on the consent agenda. I think if we could have appointed her for the remainder of that term and the rest of it, we would have, but we were told we couldn't. So I think
But it wasn't Tricia. I mean, so come on.
that
She
didn't
shouldn't have been there.
That didn't,
You shouldn't have been voting. Who the next,
okay,
who was
that,
the
you and
better candidate?
we have a difference of opinion here. I do not think that when someone is up for reappointment and there's a separate open seat and there are two people applying for that, that it's inappropriate. I don't think
Well,
it's a
I'm
problem
gonna say-
because she was a member of the board. We can agree to disagree. You've stated your position. I'm just saying I don't agree with you.
Okay, I understand that.
It's a confrontation, see?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, thank you. And
Thank you.
again, I also want to echo the apology, and now you can see why I really didn't think it was the time to entertain that discussion, but I hope you feel you had a fair shot at responding.
Gave me an opportunity to respond to it, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President, can I ask just a point of information on the appointments of the trustees? Just as a...
Order, please. It's done.
As I read the statute giving us the authority to appoint, and this will probably be for the solicitor.
You cite the statute?
It's Chapter 29-4, Section 5. It sounds like the intention is to have the Board of Trustees broken into thirds, with 1/3, roughly speaking, 7, obviously you can't do thirds, but with 1/3 appointed every year, so that's continually cycling annually. And we don't seem to be on that schedule. So I just wanted to find out if that's something in the past has been done that shouldn't be done, and that might need some corrective action, or if that's not a problem with respect to that statute. And I wanted to ask the clerk if it's not too difficult, like digging through those ancient books that are in the vault, to just get a sort of a history of the appointees, when they were appointed for what terms. I'd just kind of like to see that, because it does seem like we verged from the law at some point.
Sometimes with these unexpired terms, and they come in and it does, yes, we can get that for you, but it's going to take a few days.
Okay.
I mean, it's
No,
not
we've got
tomorrow's-
at least 2 weeks.
It's going to take a while.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We're going to keep on pressing on here. We're talking now about the Renewable Energy Services contract. Over to our town administrator.
Thank you. This can be short, hopefully. I have started discussions with one of the 4 proponents, hopefully to finish up a contract as soon as possible. I had actually hoped to be a little bit further because there was a proposal made. I shared it with the solicitor and asked him to review it and let me know whether it seemed acceptable. It has to do with the fact that this proponent is willing to contribute to the cost of a specializing attorney who's very familiar with these kinds of agreements, what are called net metering agreements, and could probably get this done in no time. And it might even be done within that amount that the proponent is willing to pay. But I really want the opinion of the solicitor to know whether that's appropriate to go forward in that way. If it is, I think we can get this done pretty quickly. I did want to clarify, I have done that, I believe, in the weekly report as well, that the last time the council discussed this, it was left as if I needed to negotiate with all four proponents. I think there was a misperception that somehow I thought we were going to change the terms of the request for proposals or of the contracts that had been submitted. That's not the case. I discussed that with the solicitor at the time, the previous solicitor, and he saw no problem with the approach that I did need to follow, which is just to negotiate a contract with the most advantageous, with the proponent of the most advantageous proposal. And so hopefully the next time you meet, I may have some advice from the town councilor and be able to move forward with that.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, wonderful. That was an update only. We're moving on to town council governance items. There are 6 items, of which I think 5 will be quite quick, and perhaps one we should consider delaying. The first is a document that you've received, which is only an informal agenda planning document. We introduced this concept, I think, at the last meeting. And it just loosely sets out in a non-binding fashion agenda items that appear to be open matters and how we might, at least as it looks now, might be scheduling them a quarter at a time. I very much encourage, this is, I'm sorry, E2A in the packet.
Wait a minute. I don't think it was like this. Yeah, all right, yeah, I got it. I saw it.
And also, the same invitation and request to the town clerk and the solicitor and the administrator and the planning board as well, that if you have agenda items, it'd be very helpful if you can give us some indication, heads up in priority and how much time you might need as we strive to make these, try to optimize the meeting efficiency. Again, this is not a binding document, but just to very quickly go through the list, we are proposing a special meeting workshop for Monday, February 4th, to have another budget-focused workshop. That'll be next on the agenda. We'll see if there's support for that. And then the open items would be, there's a consideration of an ordinance for sanctuary city policy, this governance policy. There's a question raised about executive session minutes, whether they should be released. We'll be looking into that. A legal services utilization policy. We'll actually probably jumpstart that conversation tonight with a conversation with the planning board and how legal services can be best utilized by them and how we can support them. Playground. We will be, as we promised, kicking off a formal RFP process for a solicitor. The solar ordinance, I think, is at the moment in the planning board's court. And then the department head employment contract template. We have a number of unassigned items, collective bargaining, department head contracts, and I think the auditor and the actuary needs to come to town, although I forget when. We may have an industrial park item. Take a look at this, push back. If you have anything you'd like to see on here, it's administrative, so I think you can send it directly to me or Justin if you'd like, or send it to Nancy. That's also no problem.
Mr. President.
Sir.
I have a question because something came up. If you have an emergency situation and you can't get it on the agenda in time, what is the procedure? Is there a such thing as an emergency?
Definitely, yep.
Okay.
And that's in the.
Because that's what I'm trying to
Yes, we
find
can
out if
call
there
an
is.
emergency meeting, and then, although I think because of the time pressure, we may not spend so much time on the council's governance policy, but at least one proposal is to reserve maybe 30 minutes of time on a scheduling document like this for those types of circumstances that may come up that we may not know about to the last minute, but that's the thinking. Okay. So please feel free to share this, pass it around if there's something we've missed. If you've heard us promise to put something on the agenda and it's not on this list, hold us to it. Okay. All right, that was A. B, February 4th. Is that a week from tonight? So we had our first dedicated budget workshop January 5th. This would be the second one. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Do you need a vote, or can we schedule that by consensus? Okay, done.
What is it, February 4th?
Monday,
it's
February
next
4th,
Monday.
7 o'clock. All right. Liaisons. So the concept of town council liaisons, I think I introduced this topic briefly at the last meeting. This is part of the boards and commissions policy. My question for the team here is, would you like to continue that practice? Is there anybody that has a problem continuing that practice? Okay, hearing none, let's continue the practice. Okay, and then if any of you have a particular board or commission that you'd like, maybe you want to mix it up, or maybe you really are in the middle of a project that you want to stick with, can you please it's administrative, so I think you can write to me if you want, or just write to the clerk. If we don't hear from you, then I think we're going to propose a slate. So, and if nobody volunteers for something,
You gotta volunteer quickly.
then I mean, we can trade out. But if nobody volunteers for something, then I think that Justin and I will.
Mr. President, quick question. I should know this, but I don't. Is this something that the charter provides for, or is this past practice? And do you know why it was started? Does somebody have, what the purpose of it was?
Yeah, I could take a shot at it. To be clear, it's not in the charter, and to be very clear, it in no way is meant to disrupt their normal reporting channels, which I think in the elected boards are the elected boards, and then for the unelected boards, I think every single one of them goes across the town administrator's desk, with the exception of the planning board, which has a matrix relationship, or perhaps comes straight to us. The idea here is just to just have another means of communication, a way of reaching out, perhaps building some expertise, spreading out some of the workload. Certainly, none of the liaisons would purport to represent the position of the whole body, but, and if particularly if it's an area of interest, just to try to have coverage across the town. Do you want to add anything? Did I leave something out?
No, I think that it's very helpful, because if they have just a quick question, they can go to their liaison. If we feel it needs to go to the administrator or whatever, it works that way. Also, sometimes it's helpful for, if they have a particular thing going on and they want it announced, they tell the liaison, we announce it during our announcements. I've always found that I think the boards and commissions find it helpful. In no way is it interference at all. And I've been on several of these, and sometimes I go to the meeting just to see what's going on, and I report it back to the council. So it's not to be part of their committee. It's to kind of help them if they need any kind of resources.
Is there any way that board or commission can voice their preference to which of you
Well, no, it's never
fabulous
worked.
people
It's never
we can
worked
get?
that way.
I don't think so.
No. Like, I've been on,
I mean, it would make sense if we,
well, I've been on
I would respectfully request, please.
I've been on the same ones.
show how popular you are,
Well,
Well, yeah, that might be a problem.
Maybe just tell it to Nancy.
And also, I've been on a few since I've started the council, so I'd like to stay on those,
Yeah.
because I know the way they run.
And I should say too, all of us can go to every meeting, so
Yeah.
this doesn't preclude anybody. You obviously have to
No.
be careful with open meetings. But
Yeah, they have someone to go.
that's the idea. But
Are we staying on the ones we're on already, or are we going to reassign?
Oh, I'll send the ones I'm on already that I'm still interested in.
Yeah.
in whoever wants them, and then I'll spread it.
you know what might make sense is, if you don't mind us making the request, for those of you that have some legacy appointments, if you could just let us know if you want something different, otherwise maybe we'll just assume that you want to stay where you
I'm
are.
I
happy
think
where I
I'm on a
am.
lot, so I gotta look at what
Okay.
I'm on.
I'm happy where I am.
Yeah.
I've got so many, I think, eventually.
That's all that, that's all.
Because
it is.
like you, Rob, because I was president, I took on some that people didn't want, so I think I have a lot. I don't.
But I don't want Mrs. I don't want Mrs. Pellegrini.
He doesn't want to continue that tradition.
Okay.
Spread the fun around.
All right. And if you have any other comments on the board commission policy, please feel free to keep that under your research and study. We circulated maybe the shortest policy you've ever seen, which is really trying to do two things. One is to ask the administrative team, led by Jan, to give us a 3-month heads up, non-binding, but where he's headed on some employment contract renewals. And secondly is to make clear that 3-month heads up is just that, and it is not sort of this open session where we all talk about, whichever department head. So it's pretty simple. The idea here is to help just keep things from jamming up here in the end, and also balancing out the schedule so that we don't, if there's going to have to be extended discussions, we'd like to know about that well in advance. I don't know if the administrator would like to comment. I know you've had a chance to see this. Do you have any, how do you feel?
It's a good aspirational policy.
Depending on what's on his desk every day.
So with that bringing endorsement, Mr. President, I'll move this policy.
I just have.
I'll second it.
Okay. It's so short, I could actually read it if you'd like. But did anyone have any questions or concerns or comments?
Yeah, on the contract. I think I did, but I don't.
Actually, yeah, I do. I think the whole policy, this whole idea potentially needs to be revisited. Unfortunately, I've been here when we have had employees whose contracts were not renewed. And I don't think it's a healthy, and we have something in the contracts that say people need to be that they need to be notified if 3 months ahead of time. That's not a very healthy situation for anybody. I believe in, if you're not going to, renew somebody's contract, I believe in giving them a fair severance, but we've had a couple of situations where we've had someone here whose contract wasn't being renewed. It wasn't a happy situation, and you've got this 3-month period, and it's just not good for anybody. I don't think it's good for the employee. I don't think it's good for the town. I think you're better off having a fair severance for people than keeping potentially somebody who's unhappy and disgruntled and expecting them to come for work for 3 months, especially. And I don't think it's really that good for the town administrator either to have to try and manage around that situation. So I've actually wondered kind of in general whether or not this whole concept in the contract ought to be reviewed, not just the notice part, but the whole idea of how do we fairly handle it if we decide that somebody's contract isn't getting reviewed. Just
Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. I thought this notice was just for the town administrator to tell us tentatively what he was thinking. I didn't think the employee,
it's there because that's what all the contracts say for the employees.
May I, please? Sure. So I understand the concern. I have the same concern. And sometimes it's difficult that far ahead of time to be ready. On the other hand, I think the intent of this provision was actually to benefit the employee, so that the employee has an idea, instead of waiting till the last minute, whether or not, we intend to continue the employment on it. I think that's the intent. So then the question is, how do you balance the potential downside with that intended upside?
Right.
What if the employee decided he didn't want to stay the 3 months? Could he work out a deal with the council to leave early rather than stay the 3 months? Because like Trish said, we did have a problem with an employee that we knew wasn't going to be renewed, and it was
right. And again, maybe the 90 days is a good sort of middle ground for that, because it started with 120 days, and some of the contracts still have that. That's an awfully long time. I don't think there's anything either in the contract or in the charter that, prohibits us from terminating earlier if that's what the employee chooses to do. It just has to give notice,
If it
that's
was
all.
worded in there that he could have the choice to leave early with an agreement.
I don't have a problem with adopting this for tonight. I just think,
Yeah.
long-term, if we're talking about in general, looking at the contracts, that's, I find, a particularly troubling clause. And some sort of, be fair to the employee, but also at the same time, not create a, 3-month untenable situation. There should be a way to work around that, so.
So my understanding is that this is for the employee's benefit, but also for the town council, so that, we're kept apprised of the approach of a contract. And I would read it as the parenthetical note that in the case of special circumstances, the town administrator can provide a status report, would mean that it would satisfy this policy if, in his discretion, he thought there might be a problem arising from a particular statement or whatever regarding renewal, say, status report, this is up in 3 months, that's all I have to say right now, and that kind of answers the policy.
You're getting 2 of those tonight.
Okay.
I would say, so not to go back to championing this quarter-by-quarter planning document, but I would think, so department head contract template, this was, I think, something that came up in the context of the planner and the tax assessor. So this is unassigned, but it's at least, unless you tell us otherwise, that the agenda team's going to try to get this on this quarter. So we'll be sure to take that up in depth, if that's okay. At the moment, we have nothing assigned for March 25th, but I have a feeling that will fill in.
Don't worry.
So, okay.
It'll fill in.
All right, any further comment on that? Everybody good? Okay. We have a live motion on the floor. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Trying to move through. Okay, so this was the governance policy. There were very rough, and I mean rough from me, bullet points submitted. I don't know if they're in the formal packet or if they were just handed out tonight. Okay.
Just handed out.
So why don't we not, I mean, if anybody wants to discuss it, great, but why don't you take a look at that? I have no problem releasing my comments to the public. So if others want to see that, again, these are just things we're trying to do to either re-adopt the prior town council governance policy or make some edits. And there are comments in there from me. And who else took up my request?
I think
You
Nancy.
also, I think there's feedback from Donna, me, and Nancy. And I didn't.
No, there's one.
And from Mr. Moses. Okay.
Rob, could we look at this the next meeting so we can read this
and
over?
that'll work out with time, with the time pressure. And then finally.
I think you have it there anyway.
So 2F is, again, maybe this is a good idea, maybe it isn't, but this is an example of when we put brief introduction, I'm just trying to give you an early heads up of something coming up down the line. And so one of them is this concept of a policy to help answer some of the questions about the use of legal services in the town. It's been a sensitive subject, and it's something I think we'll have a nice conversation tonight in the planning board context. So just, that's coming. And for those of you with, suggestions of how to balance that, how to manage the workload, please start thinking about that, and that'll be coming down for discussion. Okay? And that is all I had on the town council governance items. So we have a bunch of financial business, but do we need to discuss it all? I will leave that to Jan to tell us.
Thank you. The first item involves the building official line item, the salary account for that. And I will start by apologizing that someone else had to raise that before I did. We have looked into that. We do have a shortage currently that needs to be filled. I also want to thank the treasurer for working with me to identify how best to do that. The suggestion was made that because we are working with municipal code consulting to provide these services, and because it's contracted services, we're not paying personnel benefits, that it would make sense to take the equivalent out of the benefits account. So that's what you see in the proposed budget transfer out of various benefit accounts, what we would have otherwise paid to a building official who's on the town payroll. And the total of that is $27,501, and I request that you approve that transfer. I have to say that this is not the final solution for this fiscal year. We still need to find additional money to cover this particular cost. I don't know if you want to go into any further discussion of why it is that we're still working with municipal code consulting rather than have a building official. It's not by choice, I can tell you that. Although on the other hand, I think that municipal code consulting is giving us a pretty good deal. But obviously, that's all very debatable. But for the time being, I request that you approve this budget transfer.
Mr. President?
May I speak?
I think maybe
Yeah,
Denise-
I was going to make a motion.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
And then okay. I'd like to make a motion to transfer $5,228 from account number 2250-5365 Social Security to transfer $1,524 out of 222-05264 Mayor's Retirement, to transfer $683 out of account number 2220-5265, to transfer $15,648 out of account 2190-5268 Health Insurance, to transfer $880 out of dental insurance number 2190-5270, to transfer $3,000 out of HSA contribution, account number 2190-5260, and to transfer $538 out of life insurance account number 2190-5272 for a total of $27,501 to account number 1140-5101 salary building official.
Second.
Donna?
Oh, I just wanted to make mention that, if I'm correct, Jan, that it seems to be a statewide problem with getting building inspectors.
It is very, very difficult right now to get candidates for the building official. Several municipalities have had trouble filling vacancies to the point that the state building commissioner is quite concerned and is actually looking for ways to be able to step in, which I think he has to do by statute, if I'm not mistaken, using actually a firm like Municipal Code Consulting. So yes, it's a difficult situation, and what I can say about that, it's a little bit outside the budget request, but just an update, unless that is later on the agenda. And thanks. But on the building official, that posting has actually been kept open on the State Building Commission site with no responses to date. And we can also repost it on the website, since that doesn't cost anything, and you never know if someone in the area might become interested in doing this. So that's what I propose to do at this point.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you can go.
No, I was going to ask if anyone had any questions. Go ahead.
So, the 27,000, how far does that get us to the end of the year?
It doesn't get us very far beyond where we currently are, actually.
So,
I don't, I'm sorry?
10,000.
10,000, you said? Yeah. It's
Yeah,
10,000
it's not going to carry us very long, so we still have an urgent need to look where else in the budget do we think we're going to have a balance, which I'm working on with the treasurer, and then, have to come back with a proposal.
So, this building official shortage in Rhode Island, I actually think that this is one of the places where, and we're not the only community, that we need to go to our legislators, because Rhode Island won't recognize building official certification for Massachusetts, and it's ridiculous. And where, you know, this is out of control. The other thing that I would point out, I don't know where we are in our discussion with the state building office about our building fees, which we're in the bottom of the barrel. And we're right now spending boatloads of money on this. And, you know, they're setting up these things based on historical amounts of permits issued, combined with what it costs the municipality to issue the permits. I think we have a very good case for getting out of that bottom tier at this point, and I hope we can pursue that.
And on the first one, I totally agree. We should talk to the legislators and make it clear, and we can probably do it through the League of Cities and Towns, or, you know, in coordination with the state building official. That is an important thing to do. There will be some back and forth because there were reasons why, and there may also be a lobby at work to some extent, but I do agree, that's something that we should try to pursue. On the second item, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here.
On the fee.
The
on
fees,
fee structure.
that's actually in the works, and actually the interim building official has been working on that, has been talking to the state building commissioner, and expects that we can resubmit a request to adjust the fees so that we're in at least the next tier, if not higher. And we have gathered the information to support that request. So I think that I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to adjust the fees sometime in the near future.
Okay.
Okay, we have a live motion on the floor. Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Hearing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Back to you on the
next one, I'm going to ask the DPW director to come forward as well to briefly explain that particular request. I think I gave you a little bit of a heads up, if I'm not mistaken, that this comes down to the condition of our equipment and vehicles, and the director, in my view, being quite proactive, trying to figure out whether the budget is actually going to be sufficient to deal with necessary repairs. But he can explain better than I can.
Good evening. At this point, I brought up 6 different issues on line items. We're requesting 4 line items have transfers, and the remaining 2, we're in the hopes that a mild winter will allow some freeing up of monies in winter-related accounts. Also, the other 4 may require more funds depending on, for instance, the clerk's salary. She's out on an extended sick leave, and we have to obviously hire temporary help to fill that gap. So at this point, although there's 6 line items with projected shortfalls, we're requesting that 4 accounts have funds transferred. They are clerk's pay, telephone, supplies miscellaneous, and dozer repairs. Again, the clerk's pay is as described. As far as the telephone and CAT-V, there's been a modest increase in the monthly fees over the projected budget from a year ago. Also, the supplies and miscellaneous has been where computer hardware and software needs and repairs have been taken out, and the computer repairs are roughly about $3,000, and the budget to begin with was only $5,000, so that leaves a shortfall in that item. The 4th one is fuel, is the dozer repairs. Although the undercarriage was repaired with like $54 to spare for the projected budget of $10,000, the computer failed, and you have to have the computer to run the dozer. This is for the landfill. So that's projected at $4,000. In the request for budget transfer, it lists the 2 accounts that we'd like to take money out of and transfer into those 4 accounts. Would you like those read, or do you?
Looks like they're coming out of your paycheck, that's what it looks like. You're a good man.
That's where they're coming out of.
Just a quick summary of what it gives you confidence you can take the money out of these.
Because he wasn't here.
Yes. The first one was because the director didn't start till August 8th, and the second one is there's no emergency need for guardrail, so any desired guardrail placement will have to be put off.
And these would be guardrails where?
No, we have no immediate need for guardrail.
Just
so,
like around streets
Around
or
town.
whatever?
Yeah,
Okay.
around town where they exist now. Sometimes they need replacing, right, and things like that.
Right now, we're lucky.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a
Okay.
motion.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
I'd like to transfer $10,000 out of account 5440-5100, director's salary, to account number 5540-5102, clerk's pay. I'd like to transfer $250 out of account number 5540-5100, director's salary, to account number 5540-6935, telephone. I'd like to make a motion to transfer $1,600 out of director salary 5440-5100 to account 5540-7423, supplies and miscellaneous. I'd like to transfer $150 out of director's salary 5540-5100 to account number 5530-7645, dozer repairs. And finally, transfer $3850 out of 5540, 6797, guardrails, to account 5530-7645 to dozer repairs.
Second.
Okay, we have a live motion on the floor. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, any objection to proceeding to a vote? All those in favor? Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Stu's finally on.
I'm so patient. Mr. Stuart Harvey from the Planning Board. We have 2 subtopics. One is the role of the consulting engineer and legal counsel in the planning board meetings. And B is the zoning amendments mandated by the recent comp plan update and a request to issue an associated RFP. Take those in any order you'd like.
Right, thank you. I'll take them in order, and I think I can be very brief. I'm Stu Hardy, 51 Summerfield Lane. I'm a member of the Planning Board, and I chose not to run for re-election as chair, so we now have Susan Gill as chair. I'm vice chair. There were some conversations, emails and telephone calls and so on, floating about a couple of weeks ago about possible changes in legal services for the Planning Board, and also possible changes in consulting engineering services for the Planning Board. Actually, I think both of these issues have been fairly well resolved just in the last week or so. We had Giovanni at our early January meeting, and we asked him a lot of questions, and he was very thorough, very informative, and very helpful. So I think we're in great shape with our legal counsel. And I understand that our consulting engineer, which is an employee of Steer Engineering in Rhode Island, Joseph Cardello, will be with us for our February meeting, so I think we're in good shape there. But I thought it would be helpful, even though I'm not here in an official capacity, we weren't able to get this issue on the agenda of our last meeting. It came up too late, but even though I'm just speaking as more or less a private citizen and not in an official capacity, I would like to just take just a minute or two to inform everybody about how the Planning Board depends very, very strongly on both our legal counsel and our consulting engineer. With respect to legal counsel, as you know, the planning board, which, by the way, reports directly to the town council, we advise town council. So we're like the elected boards in that respect. But we're a semi-judicial body, and when we make a decision on an application for development, that decision is written, posted, it's publicly available, and it's subject to being challenged, and so it is subject to judicial review, and we have to get it right, and that's why it's really essential to have a good, solid legal counsel sitting at all of our meetings. I've been always very careful as chair of the planning board not to ask questions, not to directly talk to our legal counsel. I always go through our planner or our AO to do that, to keep the legal fees as modest as possible. But we really need legal counsel at all of our meetings when we're making decisions, because those are quasi-judicial decisions that are subject to appeal. So with respect to our consulting engineer, that's even more serious, I think, because keep in mind that whenever the planning board has to make a decision, before we can vote on a proposal, whether it's a preliminary plan or a master plan or a final plan or anything else, we have to make findings of fact. And those findings of fact, there are actually 5 categories that we're required to address under state law. And those 5 categories are heavily technical engineering in nature. They have to do with human health and safety. They have to do with environmental protection and environmental compliance with state and federal environmental laws. And so the findings of fact are also crucial to any kind of judicial review that might come up later on. And the courts will look at that and say, did these guys know what they're, did they make a sound decision based on the best available technical information? So we need our consulting engineer. We need him at our meetings to advise us, and also to interact, as our legal counsel will interact, with the representatives of the developers. Because when a developer comes before us, that developer almost always has a civil engineer at his side, and very often has legal counsel as well. And when those people, and anybody who has attended our meetings knows this, those folks are not reluctant about making a strong case for the project. That's what they're getting paid for. And we, in order to protect the town of Tiverton, we, the planning board, need the expertise of our consulting engineer and our legal services or our solicitor to give us an independent, objective appraisal so that we can balance the two and come up with something that's good for the town of Tiverton. So that's all I have to say really about that. I think these issues have been largely resolved. I was panicked there for a while, but I think things are working out. What caused it, I think, is that our contract with Steer Engineering had come to an end, and we needed to renegotiate. And there was a question about the fact that in the earlier round, Steer had agreed to provide Joe Cardello free of charge at our meetings, but I think that's being resolved. The good news here is that we do charge fees, and unlike the building fees, which haven't been amended since I was part of the process in the year 2001, our planning board fees get looked at on a fairly regular basis, And when we come up with recommendations, we give those recommendations to town council, and you actually approve the fees or disapprove the fees or amend the fees. And you last did that in August, late August of 2017. So our fee schedule is only 18 months old. We can go back and take a look at it anytime we want, and we can raise those fees. I can tell you we're not in the low percentile, nor are we in the high percentile. In comparison with the other communities in the state of Rhode Island, we're right about in the center. And Susan Gill is here, and she did an awful lot of work last time we did this to make sure that that we were in line with other communities that are typical, that are similar to Tiverton. But if you would like to raise more money, we will certainly be happy to review our fee schedule and see if adjustments are necessary. Because under state law, we are, and I can give you the specific provision of state law. It's in the Land Development and Subdivision Review Enabling Act 452358. It says that we can charge fees up to, but not exceeding, the actual cost of reviewing development proposals. So we can go higher. I checked with Denise Surratt a few weeks ago to see how we were doing on raising fees, planning board fees, and she gave me, she indicated that in calendar year 2018, we actually raised $19,150.50. So that can be used to pay for our consulting engineer and to help, at least help pay for the legal services that we're now getting from Giovanni. So that's just a little bit of background information, and that's all I have to say on that particular agenda item.
Thank you. Great.
So on the next...
I just have one
We do have questions. Okay.
I think I asked this last time, and I know the treasurer's still here. And those fees go in a special account, so they don't go into the general fund.
No, they don't.
She doesn't hear me. I'm probably, yeah, I just want to make sure, because you know...
I feel strongly about this.
Yeah, because you know how sometimes fees go into the general fund, so these fees go into a special account.
There's two types of fees that the planning board collects.
Okay.
And in that two types of fees, there's a subset of one of those fees.
Okay.
There is planning board fee revenue, which you charge the applicants $200, $100, depending on what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's another set of fees that I believe the planning board
We don't call them fees, we call them, we call them
Escrows.
escrow.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Because they are tied to a specific project.
Right, and I understand, okay.
So we have escrow
And that goes
accounts
into
set
the
up.
escrow account.
It goes into an escrow account. And from that escrow account, we pay for steer engineering or any other recording fees associated with the project. And I know that the land use clerk, Sue, works with the applicant, so they know where they stand and what they have in their escrow and if there's other invoices coming up. The $19,000 that Mr. Hardy is referring to, that was fee revenue that went into the general fund.
Yeah, that's...
So that,
that's
not money available to spend.
That's not really offsetting the cost.
Well,
If it's
you know-
going, well, yeah, but it's going into the general fund. And-
Giovanni can tell us, but I think there might be a legal issue here. It probably should be in a restricted fund and restricted just to pay for the planning board services. I think that would create a paper trail that would help us out if we're ever challenged. And fairly recently, we were challenged by an attorney for a developer for a big development in the town of Tiverton, who challenged our fees and said, I'm thinking of taking you to court on this. And if we don't have a restricted account showing that, we're taking these fees seriously as planning fees to be put against planning expenses, then we could potentially, I don't know the law, Giovanni would know.
So the answer to my question with that 19,000 is it does go into the general fund.
In this instant, yes, it does, because it's in the docket. It was part of the projected expected revenue.
Right.
So that's where it's recorded. It's not to say that you couldn't change the way it's recorded. It's just you would.
I might add that the charter requires all fees to
Right.
the general
To go into
fund,
the general
so
fund, that's why
it
I'm
uses the word
asking.
all, so I mean, we can, I think we're going to be looking closely at that. 'Cause that's been
you'd have
an
to
issue.
designate it for.
Escrow is a
right.
totally different thing.
Well, it's
But
just
then-
like building permit fees. They go into the general fund.
Right, right. Okay.
Right.
Now,
And I should also say that Rob just brought up escrow. That's a third financial category that is charged. When a project is approved, we set escrow, which is a performance guarantee that requires the developer to put money aside. Usually it's in the form of a bond, sometimes it's a bank account, to put money aside that can pay for all of the improvements that the town will eventually take over, streets typically. And then when all of those improvements are made to the satisfaction of our DPW director, then we will release the escrow back to the developer. So it's just a performance guarantee, it's not a fee. But, so we're dealing with three things here, and we shouldn't confuse them.
All right, I was just.
If I may.
Thank you, thank you.
We have a little more?
My main concern has been the budgeting, because this makes a lot of sense that there is a need to have a consulting engineer and an attorney at the meetings. When the issue arose with the Steer engineering contract, it started with, we want to get paid for attending the meetings, just being there. And there was some back and forth about that was not initially the understanding. They were going to not charge us for just being there. They would still get paid for specific cases that require consulting engineering work through the escrow account arrangement. But not every case before the planning board has that sort of arrangement. So my question became, what are we doing? How do we actually pay for the time that either an attorney or, in particular, the consulting engineer spends on cases that only paid the regular fee and not the, don't have the escrow account? So I have some concern with whether we have a good grasp on, what the overall costs can be in any given year, and not having a budget necessarily to pay for all of it is problematic. I had some question also, when you said that, when Mr. Hardy said that in the meeting, he tries to control it by only asking questions when necessary and only through the solicitor. If the attorney is sitting there, he's getting paid.
Well, it's part of the
No. What I meant to say, and forgive me if I misspoke, is that if a legal issue comes up outside of the context of a public meeting, if a legal issue comes up, I'm talking to Susan, we decide that there's a legal issue, I go to the AO or the planner. I do not go directly to the solicitor, because I want to control those costs, because the minute you talk to a lawyer, they turn the meter on.
So my only question then remains is, do you, in fact, because these meetings can be lengthy, do you expect, and is it necessary, which I'm not saying it's not, okay, but you can't have it both ways. If in fact an attorney needs to be there for the whole meeting, and an engineering consultant needs to be there for the whole meeting.
No,
Or can it be managed?
It can be managed probably better than we have managed it in the past. I think that when we are hearing applications, we definitely need our solicitor and we definitely need our consulting engineer. But when we finish that, toward the end of the meeting, we typically get into the more, I call them housekeeping kinds of things, our internal policies, our subdivision regulations, setting fees and that kind of thing. And if we certainly don't need a consulting engineer for that, or, Yeah, usually we don't, and we might not even need a solicitor. So I think we can do that. We can cut back on that by not requiring people to stay for the whole meeting if it's going to.
And I did want to mention that with the new budget request, I put money in there because I didn't see anything budgeted for this kind of an expense beyond what is otherwise available. So it may be too much, it may not be enough, I don't quite know, but there's a $12,000 amount in there for the planning board for professional services.
Mr. President, I thought with the discussion last week that Attorney Sicilione is going to try to be there as much as he can. You will be at the meetings.
Yes, and if I could, I'd offer a more detailed response, just in somewhat brief, if the President is okay with that. But I think there's 2 points that are worth mentioning here. One is that given the legal services arrangement of the town, that the land use and planning and zoning budget is a retainer. And so if the meetings do go long, of course, it's not costing you more in this budget year, but I think what comes up is that when you're up for renewal and people look at the number of hours that go in, they'll make their assessment when they bid for the contract down the road. So you've got me over the barrel, at least for a few more months, and so feel free to use me. And I think you suggested maybe at the last meeting that I didn't stay for some further discussion, but learning the ropes in the town, I did stay, and it was on my dime, essentially. I think the other point that I'll make, as having done a lot of economic development work in my past life and having represented developers for many years, I wouldn't hesitate to find ways to make their lives easier by either having your lawyers more available or your engineers more available. Because in the big scheme of a significant commercial development in particular, another couple $1,000s at the planning phase is nothing compared to the cost of delays, a week of turnaround time, or whatever that might be. And as Jan mentioned with the solar project, the RFP, they're willing to spend $1,000 to hire a lawyer to get things to go faster. Really, I understand the desire to not be the highest in the state in terms of your fees. But if what you're providing is actual real service for those applicants, and you're making their turnaround times faster, then you're saving them money, and they recognize that. Developers know that. So I would look at both sides of that when you consider this, and also to the extent that if you're collecting $19,000 in fees, but your budget for this year is $28,000 for your land use and zoning, then I would think that as long as it's accounted for, I don't mean switching it from general fund to different accounts, but I mean as long as you track that, maybe there's at least $10,000 or $11,000 of additional fee capacity under the state law that you could put in, and if you're asking for more services next year, maybe more attendance, more regular attendance, or office hours for the benefit of planning and zoning, budget that in and then build it into your fee structure. I really don't think you're going to get a lot of developers upset about that. I'm not a...
We will.
Well,
the smaller developers get very upset.
And maybe
the bigger developers, when we were dealing with the casino folks, that was an irrelevant issue to them. They just wanted to move forward as quickly as possible. But the small people, so we have to do a little bit of a balancing act. And when we do recommend fees, we tend to do that in the context of a public hearing. So they show up and they speak up. But I completely agree with what Giovanni said. I think it's to everybody's benefit in the long run to set higher fees and make things happen quicker.
I'm just curious, can you have two tracks? Like you have your basic fee structure and then there's the fast track, and if they want to pay a little extra to make it go faster, they can?
That would be a little confusing, I think, to try to, I don't think we could handle that.
Well, I think the only way that I haven't researched this. The only possibility that comes to mind is having a track which allows the developer to build into the escrow side a certain amount of legal services as they do with the engineering services. So if you have, that's a negotiated discussion that you have with the developer. If the developer sees the value in that, and a big developer will, then you budget for a certain number of hours or a certain dollar amount in the escrow side, and that way it's not coming out of town budget.
The escrow is negotiated between the planning board and the developer, so it's something everybody agrees to.
And that might
then
be-
they know that they're going to get back what is not expended on their project.
And that might be something you could build into the legal services agreement when you renew, as we did with labor, for example, where you have a retainer and a labor council aside, but if there is a need, there's an hourly rate, you charge that same hourly rate as a pass-through to the developer, so it's not coming out of the town's pocket. That could be a net neutral way to fund that.
So
I agree.
When the escrow is released, some portion goes to the attorneys or presumably an engineer if that's needed to make it go faster, but whatever the negotiated escrow is, that's the direction it would take.
Yeah, I believe that's how it works with Steer right now, is that, you know, if it's $2,000 worth of billing from Steer, that comes out of that escrow amount. And the escrow includes professional services, it includes, you know, infrastructure, you know, road costs, those sorts of things, in different categories, and they're estimated by a negotiation process between the engineers, the town, the planning board, or the planner, and so you could certainly build that in, I would think, you could build that in on the escrow side without having to create a whole new structure.
Okay, great. And I think this is I think a nice little beta conversation about a larger legal services policy that I'm hoping we can tackle, and then have that flow right into the RFP. So the process that I think we heard sounds pretty reasonable to me, that it goes through a planner and an AO, and there's some balance there to make sure people are in the know and there's some vetting. Okay. Should we switch to? Oh, go ahead.
Well, before we finish on that, and I think Stu knows that I'm very supportive of the planning board having legal resources whenever they need them and engineering resources. But just while we're on the topic of engineering resources, because I'm not only the liaison to the planning board, I'm also the liaison to the zoning board, and I'm just going to throw this out there, that the zoning board has, you know, struggles often. While they have legal services, they don't have any engineering support. And when they have things that come in front of them that haven't been through the planning board, you know, they're often up against an engineer who's telling them, listen, don't worry, this is all going to work, it's going to be fine. Oh yeah, DM's going to love this. And so when they have things, especially that have a lot of impervious surface or a stormwater, management issue, they don't have any engineering services over there to help them. And, you know, you can look at some of the conditions of the roadways and the stormwater troubles we're having right now. I mean, so just going forward in the long term, if we're going to talk about engineering services, not for every applicant, and not certainly probably for the ones that go to the planning board first, but we ought to think about how we get the zoning board engineering support too for some applicants, and whether that can be built into their fee structure also.
Okay, should we switch to the comp?
So if that brings us to the next agenda item, the planning board did authorize me at our January meeting to call to your attention in writing the fact that there is $30,000 in the current fiscal year budget for legal services for bringing our zoning amendments into compliance with the comprehensive community plan. We just approved a new comprehensive community plan several months ago, and I believe it was approved by statewide planning, which is the final step in the process, on November 7, 2018. So we have a brand-new plan that's all tied up and blessed and in business, and now we have a 1 year. State regulations gives us 1 year to bring both our zoning into compliance with the comp plan, the new comp plan, and also our subdivisions into compliance with the comp plan. The subdivision regulations can be largely handled by volunteers, and in fact, Susan and I are working on that right now. But the zoning, that's a lot tougher, and that does require legal services, and it also requires services of a professional planner, particularly with respect to design standards. So what I did, just to make the process a little more helpful, is I put together an analysis of what, sort of a summary analysis of what needs to be done to zoning to bring that into compliance with the comp plan. And so you'll see that attached to the letter. And the reason I did that is I thought it would serve as a scope of work section for the RFP. So when you issue a request for proposals, you need to tell folks what it is we're trying to do. And so this 4-page, 3-page analysis at least is a stab at a scope of work that will help move the process forward. And as I said in the letter, I'm available to do anything else that might be needed. Obviously, if we don't get it done in a year, no one's going to jail. But I think it would be nice to aim for a year to see if we can keep on that schedule as much as possible, because our zoning does need a lot of help. It is not there are some areas that really do need to be addressed, and this is a good opportunity to do that. So that's all I had to say.
And there is $30,000 in this budget.
Absolutely, there's no question about that.
Zoning code rewrite and review.
At least start the process within a year, I think, would be the target.
Let's hope we finish.
You want to save that 30 grand?
I have a question, if I may. So I'm just wondering, so let's call it a draft scope of work. Is that purely driven by the comprehensive plan, or does it include some other somewhat related issues? And the reason I'm asking this is I was under the impression that a lot of people feel that a bigger job is needed on the zoning ordinance. And so we can do this like we're doing it with the solar ordinance. We're taking a piece and we improve on it.
No, when we...
So let me just finish my question.
Tricia and I were both
Can I
very...
finish my question, please? The question is whether we should focus on those changes that are necessitated by the comprehensive plan, or whether this should be combined with additional work that needs to be done on the zoning ordinance.
They're one and the same.
It's a question for the council as well.
I think they're basically one and the same.
Okay,
because
well, that was
when
the
we were
question.
doing the comp plan, we were looking at zoning and all of the things that I'm aware of, at least, and I know that we were also in some conversations with the zoning board to say, what is it that we need to address in the comp plan in order to clean up zoning? So I think they're one and the same. Basically, they're one and the same. There may be a few things that a good lawyer will spot, a good zoning lawyer will spot that's not in my scope of work. But I think that the scope of work pretty much covers the universe of items that really need to be addressed.
I think what you just said is key, that if in fact we are considering, to what extent a broad overhaul of the zoning ordinance was needed or is needed or whatever, and that there might be issues in addition to what flows from the comprehensive plan, then the scope of work would include that whoever we hire as an attorney to help with this does his or her own analysis as well of our zoning ordinance compared to best practices and everything. So I just want to point that out. And then the question is, was the 30,000 expected to cover all of that? Or, are we potentially thinking about more?
So, I don't think $30,000 is going to do this.
No, I don't think so either.
When you look at what's in the comp plan, and you look at our zoning code, which has just been cobbled together year after year after year, and you've got contradictory clauses and stuff that doesn't make any sense. I don't think $30,000 is going to do this, but I do think you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
This would be my recommendation, which is, and just looking at your write-up, Stu, versus reading the comp plan, I think, first of all, either the planning board and or the council should come up with a priority list, because there are a lot of important things in here, but there are some that, if we can all come to agreement, are the most important, that we should tackle those first, and we should be sure we know what we're tackling, because there's no point in hiring somebody who reads something in the comp plan and spends all this time doing it and then brings an ordinance back to the council that's going no place. That's a total waste of our money. And we've done that before.
Yes.
So I think maybe agreeing on a priority list of, these are the top 10 that we really need to get to. And tackling those first is the way to go to. Of all these, there's just a ton of stuff in this book. That, to me, makes the most sense. We start with that and, we see where we get. Now, some of these things, if we're smart, right, if we have could get our hands on some grant money and do some grant writing, some of these zoning things we could tackle with, grant money. It's out there. Some of the stuff, for example, we talked about the whole sea level rise thing and all this. There's all that federal money out there. Well, there is, right, if you are good enough at writing it. We missed the deadline for this year, but there's another deadline for next year. So we might be able to do some of this work with, some federal or some grant money if we can get our hands on it too. But that's my suggestion is look through the book, work with planning, and prioritize things, and spend that $30,000 as wisely as we can.
I'm sorry if I feel like maybe I'm talking too much, but I understand that. I agree with it mostly. The only concern I have is that you could end up making changes that you then have to make again if the larger analysis shows that, say, there are structural issues with the zoning ordinance, that you really need, a reorganization or something. I have no idea. But I think some quick analysis by someone who is, familiar with the zoning ordinances might be worthwhile. Not to do all the work to actually rewrite it, but just to get a sense of, can we make partial changes and not waste time and money because we would have to revisit it when we do the bigger job. That's the only concern I have.
I think that, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I just think you're talking about, once somebody starts into that, an extraordinarily expensive job. I think it'd be great, but unless the zoning code fairy shows up with a big pot of money, that's gonna be tough. I do think that having a planner who can help us watch out for the law of unintended consequences and help us prioritize and say, listen, this is pretty self-contained, you can do that, and you're not going to have to go back and redo it. I think that advice would be really useful in this process. But I do really think that there ought to be some agreement between the planning board and the council and a general idea of where we're going with this particular action item, so that we just don't spend a lot of money writing it, advertising it, everything else, and at the end of the day, it gets voted down.
Right, and the consultant, the lawyer and the consultant who get hired to help us, they need to be managed very carefully, otherwise they'll go through that $30,000 in no time and give us very little. I recall some years ago when Kate Michaud got us a big grant to do to start the process of our comprehensive community plan rewrite, and we hired a consulting firm that spent a lot of our money and gave us very little, and then us volunteers had to try to clean it up later on. So yes, so I completely agree with Tricia, and I think that we probably need to put together a small group made up of 1 or 2 people on the planning board and 1 or 2 people on the town council to work together to manage the process when we get it going, so that we sit right on top of the consultants and not let them run amok.
And they did run amok.
They do sometimes.
Yeah, they do.
Depends.
The Cecil Group, we got very little out of the Cecil Group. I mean, they were, but I wasn't involved in that. I was.
Okay, well, I've got a request.
Put down the
I've got a request in front of me to issue an RFP. Is the proposal here to come back to the table with a modified request, or what's your pleasure?
Well, why don't we have the planning board and look at this and do what Tricia said, pick top 10 priorities? Would that be okay? Or do you want a group to do, right? A group to do that?
Well, maybe we could each, and even,
We have
and
to-
maybe we could have 3 sets of top 10s. Maybe the planning board does the top 10, we do one, and the town administrator does one,
Yeah.
and then we see where the overlap is, and that's.
And I think some coordination with the building official, zoning official, whatever, would be important as well, yeah. But I'd be glad to work with the planning board to see.
But there is some urgency here in
There
moving
is.
it forward, because if we get to the end of the fiscal year, this money could disappear.
So what would happen, I'm just not saying this is a great idea, but what would happen if we just posted it as is and see what happens? I mean, are you
Well,
certain we wouldn't
that
get-
would have been my recommendation. I think that we can move ahead with the RFP and then do our prioritizing when we finally hire somebody. I mean, I don't know that we need to actually do the prioritizing before we even send out the RFP.
Is the concern that we'll get no seasonable bids with a list this long and a number that small? Tricia?
You can write it into the RFP.
I think so.
That's what
I
you
think the
wanna
other
do.
thing, the only other thing too about the RFP with this, because I have to admit, you know, Stu's language in here versus language in the comp plan are a little not always quite the same in a few cases. And I just worried that we're putting out an RFP that may, because remember, this is zoning, that may lead some applicant or somebody out there to believe that something's coming that may, you know. So I just wonder if maybe we should go forward with the RFP, but not,
Not put that much detail?
yeah, not put this much detail in it, and it's a, you know, rewrite of the, you know, update of the comp plan, and some things are you know, just a shorter, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Jan's
that's fine.
nodding, you know where I'm going with this.
That's
And-
fine. I'll work with.
Yeah, just condense it.
And just something that's not so specific to items, more of a, and then see what we get.
Okay, so I don't want to pick at any scabs or wounds here, but are we suggesting that the RFP be written outside of the council session and we're delegating that? Or is it coming back to a vote? Or what are we doing here? Because I'm okay with that, but I don't want to, I don't want to get
Well,
in
it's
trouble.
a fixed,
It's a town administrator in the plant and.
and it's a fixed amount of money, right? It's,
So-
that's the
It
amount
is.
of money,
Is-
that's
is
what it is.
Everybody cool with that? I just wanna make
And
sure.
they're writing zoning code, I mean, we're hiring somebody to write zoning code.
Town administrator.
So if we vote to authorize the RFP with detailed language to be delegated to the discretion of the leadership of the planning board and the town administrator, I want to know if all 7 councils are okay with that, and I want to know if I'm going to get some kind of charter issue. Can we do that? Or does it have to come back so we can wordsmith every single word on
I'm
the
sorry,
RFP?
I hate to even predict that answer. This is on your agenda, posted for a vote, I believe, right?
Right, but if we tweak the words and we delegate that to a cooperative between the leadership of the planning board and the town administrator, and perhaps subject to your review,
Well,
I'm okay with that.
The agenda item does not have that level of specificity, so I believe you have the flexibility to simply authorize what's in your agenda, and then give guidance to your town administrator separate from your vote as to what you expect, how you expect him to comply with this line item.
Okay, I want the minutes to.
And it seems to me that the RFP, the planning board has never done RFPs in the past. It's always been the town administrator working with the planner.
Right.
And just to make sure, I mean, any contract that comes back will ratify.
Yes.
This is just the RFP advertising.
He's always trying to make me sign contracts, and I'm trying to make him sign contracts. Okay, I think we're in good shape here.
That's understood.
It's an RFP, so we're not binding anything. until we-
I'll help in any way I can, but I just want to make clear that I'm not doing the RFP.
Well, you gave us a good start,
We
though.
have
That's what you think, right?
We have a town administrator and a planner.
But quite seriously, you've given us a very nice start. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stu.
Okay, I think we're looking for a vote, right? Okay. I'd like to vote to
I'm gonna make a
approve in
motion.
concept. All right, you tell me what you got. I like this. You do it.
Oh, would you like to do it?
No, I'd like you to do it.
So,
Trish, you want to do it?
Sure. So I'll make a motion to direct the town administrator to prepare and issue an RFP for, where's the amount here?
30,000.
For, are we looking for just legal or legal and technical?
I'll throw 50.
Has to be legal and technical.
Okay.
A lot of it is design standards.
Okay. So, okay, but here.
Can I
this
say
is-
legal
this is-
and/or, because sometimes you have legal folks with
Let's
a
say-
lot of
let's-
technical background.
Let's say legal and/or, because here's the one thing. Depending on what the top 10 list is, we know we're going to need technical support. We just know that. But the legal support may be a lot, or it may be a little. If it's a little, it might end up in Giovanni's belly, because it's not a whole lot, depending on which things we decide to tackle. So, but we'll say legal and technical. And/or.
So go.
For an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
Okay, and so the sense of the council is we have some draft language, but the ultimate language of the RFP will be in your discretion. Is that fair within the parameters of what's just been said?
Yep.
Okay. Any objection to proceeding to a vote? Hearing none. All those in favor? Great. Thank you. And thank you to the planning board. It's great work.
But, Mr. President, before we stop, yeah, we did.
Okay.
But before we stop, that means that we all have to, if we're going to get this done, we all have to commit to, at some point, coming back with our top 10 or top 12 or whatever it is, and that includes the council, finding some time to go through the,
We got plenty of time.
to go through the comp plan and pick out their most important things to tackle.
So that'll have to be on some agenda.
I'm adding it.
I guess,
Planning.
that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that we need to.
Now we're
Yeah,
getting
that
there.
March 25th, you're phone up.
Is that soon enough? Okay. Understood. Thank you. Okay, I think we're in the home stretch here. We are going to do another fire chief posting. This one's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, this is just a posting, and I am still working on the actual description of qualifications and responsibilities that I have to cobble together from other examples, since this posting, the last time we did it was 14 years ago, so we need to come up with an updated one. I should be able to do that within a week or so, but in the meantime, we could just post this advertisement and get the ball rolling, and then within a few days, I'll have the additional information available on the website, and that's how we typically do that. If you're okay with approving the...
Works for me. Any objections? Okay, just kind of the same drill. We're going to approve in concept and leave a lot of discretion to the town administrator on the details. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
All right, may I have a motion as such?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
We have a live motion, a second. Any further comment? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we are definitely in the home stretch. Mr. Administrator?
There are two contracts coming up on which some action is needed. The first one is the first case is the one of the DPW director. He is completing his probationary period, and he's doing so with flying colors, and so I expect to not only recommend that we continue his employment, but I'm also going to propose a salary increase as was envisioned when the council approved his appointment and with the fiscal impact analysis. However, We just took money out of his salary.
I was going to say that.
So we have some work to do, but this is only an announcement. I hope to be back.
He
And
doesn't
actually,
want a raise, he just gave us the money.
I would like to add it, if possible, to the special meeting agenda on the 4th, so that we can expedite this. The probationary period ends, I believe, on the 7th, so it would be nice to get this right. The second one is, again, just an announcement. Chief Jones will be completing his first year in March, and so I'm actually a little bit ahead of the curve on this one, and I just want to say that it certainly is my expectation that I will be expecting continuing the employment in accordance with his 3-year contract, and also in his case, I will be recommending a salary increase, but I will be back with the specifics of that. I would request either on the 11th or the 25th of February.
Very well, thank you.
Your agenda's getting bigger.
You asked for it.
That's great, that's great. I guess this is an open floor for any council announcements. Hearing none. Mr. Solicitor?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one announcement that's on the agenda, just to report that there's been a settlement in the matter of Cheryl Moore versus the town of Tiverton, civil action 117 CV 00553 WESLDA. The settlement agreement was reached in cooperation with the interlocal trust, and a payment from the town in the amount of $2,500 was our contribution to that settlement, and that is prepared to go out to counsel for the plaintiff today or tomorrow. I should say tomorrow. Also, I would note, just in passing, that 2 other items came to my attention this week: a charter complaint, which has been forwarded on by the town clerk to the municipal court, and an Attorney General's Open Meetings Act complaint, which has been noticed to the town, and we are awaiting further information from the complainant as requested by the Attorney General.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, I want to make mention that I was approached by Senator 70, no, 70 from
70.
Portsmouth, Jim 70, and Mr. De Palma, as well as the council being approached by Senator Felag at the Joint Budget Committee. They're wondering if the council wants them to come before the council with any issues they may have legislatively. So if the council wants that, we will put it on one of those meetings. I'm just didn't want to invite them without.
I guess the question is, on the one hand, we've had a lot of meetings, but we're also getting just warmed up, but we're against their legislative calendar. So I guess it's January, so we probably need to get to work with them sooner than later. Okay, so I think
Probably
we
the
should
second
do,
meeting in February.
Yeah, that February 25th meeting might work.
Okay,
pretty well.
depending upon their schedule, but I will base it at that. And then I presume with the contract going on for the February 4th, I'm going to change that to a workshop special meeting, so that you can take a vote on that. Is that what you're going to do? Okay. And then I'm just giving the council a heads up. I have an employee that's going to be out of work for 8 to 10 weeks, right during the FTR time, so I'm going to have to look into hiring a temp again. During that time, I happen to be on vacation for 10 days, so it's going to be very tight in that office. I can't, it's been planned, and I'm the one who never gets to take it, so I'm taking it.
You gotta cancel it.
Unfortunately, it's during the FTR time, so we have to. No, but, so I'm going to be coming forward. I may have to come forward. I've got to do something to replace again. It's surgery involved, so it's just giving you a heads up. I'll put it on one of those meetings.
You should cancel your vacation. I got you
I'm
good
not,
hot.
I'm
I
sorry.
got you hot water.
Not even sorry.
I got you good hot water. You should cancel your vacation.
Mr. Mr. President, can I just add a note on the clerk's report? With regard to the legislative session, just as a heads up, their bill filing deadline is generally around mid-February, so, and they can certainly get around that, especially with town-specific legislation, but just for the ease of passage and the ease of the, you know, supporting the offer of your delegation, if you have anything that you would consider being heard between now and June, a placeholder bill would not be inappropriate or unusual. And if there's something very, you know, basic that could address an issue, you could get that in there with little difficulty. And at least if you get to March or April or May and you can fine tune it, there's a bill with a number and a you know, committee assignment that will allow you to move forward.
Mostly around here, we're against what they want to do. Just saying.
So I was thinking of your one with the fees, right?
Yeah,
but there's also
mostly,
something else.
mostly when they come, we're against what they want to do. We don't often ask them to actually put bills in. They're just like, we're just like, please stop that idea. It's a bad one.
But we have asked them, we have asked them to put bills in. We definitely asked them to put bills in.
Well, and as the clerk points out, I think you have some charter cleanups that will require ratification, so I think you'll have at least one that would be, you know, well-suited to tee up.
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, I propose that we end the open session and proceed into executive session.
I don't think you'll need it.
No?
What?
Seriously?
If I may.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't think there's really a lot of update at this point. Basically the same posture as we discussed the last time with the police union. The meeting will actually be tomorrow, so hopefully there will be a lot of progress made tomorrow. We also have another meeting with the fire union on Thursday, and the negotiation team will meet tomorrow in a pre-meeting. And there actually has been, we had a very productive meeting, we think, the last time. And so we're hopeful that we might be able to make some progress on Thursday as well. But there really is no need to have further discussion unless either Donna or...
It can be short, but
You think we need it?
the police, yeah.
Okay, we'll be quick.
Yeah, just-
We'll be quick.
Yeah, it's
We propose to have a very brief closed executive session at the request, at least on the agenda, by the town administrator.
I tried.
General Law 4246-5A2, collective bargaining.
Don't go anywhere.
IBPO and IAFF, those are the police and firefighter unions. I need a motion and a second and a roll call vote, please.
Second, yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
We're in executive session.